we're going to get started. Officially calling the school committee meeting for December 8th, 2020. Thank you. Officially call the meeting to order Thursday, December 8th, 2022. Meeting is being recorded by Norton Cable. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Flag is to my left. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first item is the Norton Need group with their grants announcement. Please come on down.
Thank you for having us. I'm Kate Conway. I'm the president of Need, Kate Public Speaking. But I'm happy to be here tonight with my treasurer, Gina Heaney, and we are here to announce the recipients of our annual grant program. We received 8 applications this year totaling over $21,000, which I think was maybe a new record for us. We awarded over $13,000 for 7 grants at 4 schools. And tonight we'd like to thank all the teachers who submitted the grant request and acknowledge this year's recipients. I know some of the grant recipients are here in the room tonight, so if you'd like to come up when we call your school and speak about your grant, that would be great. We're going to start with JCS. The 2nd grade team, they requested funds to start a sunflower garden called Aubriella's Garden. They received $1,200 from Need and additional funding from the SPO. The entire school will end up having its own, I think 5 different garden beds, and they will be growing all sorts of plants there, and they'll get to tend to the plants throughout the year and also view the native wildlife that brings in. Dr. Marcus, who I hope is going to come up here, received a grant to reimagine the lobby space at JCS, and he received $1,500 from Need.
Am I speaking now?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nice to see everybody. We're thrilled that Need has once again supported JCS in a wonderful way. Last year helped us to reimagine the cafeteria, and it's pretty spectacular. And this year we're planning something equally spectacular in the lobby, which is kind of an old 70s looking thing, and we're going to reimagine it in the sea sort of creature, sea world idea that we have that runs as a theme through the building. So we're very grateful to Need for your support.
The last one from JCS was Anne-Marie Baker and Holly Butler, and they're bringing in a musical artist to engage with the preschool students.
Hi everyone, thank you, and I want to thank Need so much. We have a program, Jammin' With You, that will be coming to our preschool program, The Little Lancers, and they will be doing a music program for all of our classrooms, full day, half day, and our best programs. So we're very excited to have that this year, so we really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And that was $1,350 that Need was able to help with that. At the LG, Thomas Higgins, Linda Gabat, and Julie Dermis requested funding for an author visit on Peter H. Reynolds. They received full funding in the amount of $4,500 from Need. The author will visit expected April and have 2 assemblies, one for grades K through 2 with a book reading and draw along, and another for grade 3 for book reading, draw along, and focus on stories. And hopefully he'll also be providing a special session for the teachers. At the Yale, Katie Goldboon, a music teacher, got a grant of $2,161 for a classroom set of ukuleles. I was sort of selfishly really excited about this because in Sharon, I'm the elementary music teacher, and I got my classroom set of ukuleles through Sharon's version of Need called the Sharon Education Foundation. So I was really excited that she applied for that, and we were able to do that for her. The middle school, Tanya Benoit got a grant for $3,000. She's the 7th Purple Science teacher, and that is for a Promethean board to enhance her technology skills in the classroom. And the last grant is for the high school, Amy Gaudette. I'm not sure if she's here. Oh, good, thank you. Phew.
And I just want to say for the middle school, Need provided half of the funding and the parent board
Oh,
provided
I'm
the
so
other
sorry.
half.
You're right. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you so much for awarding this grant. This grant is so that parents can get picked up for IEP meetings if transportation is an issue, and we want every family to be able to have a say in their students' education. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
While we're here, we just also want to take this opportunity to update you on a new program that NEED launched for this school year. We began a mini grant crowdsourcing program that allows teachers and staff to request funding for academic or non-academic pursuits like clubs and enrichment programs. We make these requests to the broader Norton community on a monthly basis from October to March through social media and our website, nortonneed.org, then click on mini grants. By the end of the month, the request is closed regardless of funding status to make room for the next batch of requests. So far, we have received requests from every school in the district. For the first 2 months, we received 8 requests totaling over $4,300. Of those requests, 7 were fully funded, 1 was partially funded for a total of nearly $4,000. Just a summary of those: at the high school, a follow spot for the auditorium, admission costs for students to attend the Girls STEM Summit, Wi-Fi mini projectors for art classes. At the middle school, we are helped with cameras and backdrops for the photography club. At the Yale, Tubano drums for music classes. At the LG North, map skills workbooks for all second graders. And then finally at the JCS, 2 touchscreen monitors for speech therapy and various die cuts. So thank you to the parent boards at the JCS and middle schools, their ability to help support NEED in our annual grant program. The parent boards also help communicate these different mini grant requests out there, so that's a great help. And we're also grateful for the Greater Norton community's continued generous support of NEED's programs this year. And anyone who got our grant, we would love to take a picture with you before you leave. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, as our colleagues leave, just want to thank you and the entire organization. I am just over the top about these grants and how they really connect to kids, and I'm really in love with the whole mini process, because I think that's such a here and now, right? It's like, great idea comes up, they need the support, you guys are able to accept it and go through it, reject it, of course, if it needs to be or whatever, but it's just a here and now of ideas that come up. So thank you so much and happy holidays.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. The next item is recognition of Hayes students for their charitable donations. Dr. Brown.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sophia Celestine June, and this is Delaney. Hi. And so we make bracelets, and we have a business called Rainbow Jewelers. And so when we found out about the Christmas Bazaar on November 13th, we sold, we got $700, and then we donated it all to the Boston Children's Hospital and St. Jude's.
Do you want to show the bracelets?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't even have to speak, as you can see. They came down to my office, thank you to my administration, Mr. G at the Yale, and had a great conversation with them. And we're so excited about what these young ladies did on their own with support of their families. And I'll let them do the rest.
So we brought bracelets. So at the end of the school committee, we're gonna pass out some bracelets. So if you guys want some, feel free to have some.
Thank you very much.
We brought we got the plaques too. See, that helped kids like Aspen, and I got my one.
I mean, like, right? Like, just civic pride, community service, and doing it on their own and all of that stuff. So, for the two of you, we want to recognize you this evening, both Sophia and Delaney, with the Norton Public Schools recognizing for your fundraising efforts to support the Boston Children's Hospital, St. Jude's Children's Hospital, and it's signed by me, and it's got the real sticker right on there, the seal. And Sophia.
Thank you.
And Delaney. Let's take a picture, come on.
Step up front, girls.
We can, just right over there. Yeah, you come on this side. Come on this side, you go on this side. Right there. Okay. And if the family members are here, if you'd like to come up and take a quick pic, come on up. Take you one at a time. You want to go first? Okay, you slide off. Come on. That's okay.
We love this stuff, so take your time.
Cool. And you're up next. And we'll take this way. You go this way. Let them do it by themselves, and then we'll take it together.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you. These kids are just awesome. So we appreciate you very much, and we can pass these out.
Can we do that at the end?
Sure. We can do whatever you want. You tell me what to do, and I'm happy to support it. I have no problem with that. What's the step side?
Girls, how much are the bracelets? How much are they?
They're $3.
$3. And you guys made those all by yourself?
Yeah. Yes.
And raise 700.
So how did you come up with the idea to do that? To make that?
So we like making bracelets together. So the lady goes to the St. Mary's Church, so she found out about the Christmas Bazaar, and she's like, Sophia, we should sell our bracelets there. And I was like, yeah, do it. And that's
You
what
must
we
like
did.
making bracelets. You do a great job. I can't wait to see them. Great job, girls.
Great job. All right, the next is Student MCAS Awards.
So as you know, our district is a district that spends a lot of time discussing our MCAS scores and the need for it and the growth that we have to have and all of that. But it's also, I think, important for us to recognize right off the bat our students that do well. So starting this year, we'd like to recognize students who receive perfect scores. These are students who have taken an assessment and gone at a level that I know for a fact I couldn't get. I probably couldn't take the 5th grade test right now and get a perfect score. But we want to recognize the following students. And the first student we're recognizing today, this evening, is Olive Matthew for a grade 5 perfect score in the spring 2022 ELA MCAS exam. Is Olive. Congrats. The following 5 students are at Norton High School, and they all received perfect scores in the high school biology test. Another test that I definitely would not have gotten a perfect score on. I'll start with Jacob Berry for a perfect score in the high school biology MCAS exam in the spring of 2022. Being recognized for the high school biology is Lola Diarmore, also a perfect score in the MCAS. A perfect score also in MCAS biology in 2022, Zoe Santos. Congratulations. How's that feeling? Perfect score, 2022, Nora Watras. Congratulations. Congrats. I also would like to recognize Keegan LaChance, who unfortunately could not be here this evening with us, but we congratulate him for a perfect score on the biology assessment as well. Congratulations to all.
I feel like we need to start thinking about giving the biology teacher a raise.
I believe Dr. Rigo is here cheering her students on as well. Sorry, Michael.
That's just a joke. That's our
Well,
contract.
congratulations to Dr. Rigo as well.
Yeah. You get that many students with a perfect score in one subject, that's saying something.
And let's not forget here, right? We're 2022, we're still coming out of all this stuff where the inconsistency of teaching and everything else because of the pandemic and having to learn it differently and everything else was happening in that fall when they came in 21. We were on, all kinds of models was taking place and so on. So truly an accomplishment.
So that group is, they're sophomores?
Currently juniors.
Currently juniors took it as sophomores.
Okay. And one of those perfect scores, you'll be watching football with me later. Congratulations. Much like Dr. Beata, I no way I would do that good on a score at all. All right, the next is the American Heart Association recognition.
This evening we have with us Ms. Perrin from the American Heart Association, who also happens to be a parent, also happens to just have been on a Zoom call with myself and Ms. Gallagher doing the Wellness Committee, so I'll turn it over to her this evening.
Thank you so much. Good evening. My name is Allison Perrin-Drag. I am the Government Relations Director, Senior Regional Lead with the American Heart Association, but I'm also a resident and a parent of a Norton Public School student, so I'm very pleased to be here. But I am here in my capacity as the American Heart Association and have the pleasure of recognizing 8 Heart Saver heroes for stepping in and stepping up when their help and expertise was needed to save a life because of quick thinking, preparation, and brave action during last month's football game. The Heart Saver Hero Award is an important distinction for the American Heart Association because of the incredible emphasis that we put on CPR and the importance of learning CPR. Sudden cardiac arrest is a leading cause of death. More than 350,000 people have cardiac arrest every year, and only 1 in 10 survive. And those survivors likely do that because of timely CPR. Given right away, CPR doubles or triples survival rates, and cardiac arrest is reversible for most victims if it's treated within a few minutes. Being prepared to respond to a cardiac arrest is vital to saving a life. Having trained responders, an AED available, and a medical emergency response plan in place are all critical. For the American Heart Association, there are several steps in the chain of survival, and those involved in this activated it perfectly. There's a recognition of cardiac arrest, an activation of the emergency response system, there was early CPR, and there was rapid defibrillation, and then a call to advance emergency medical services. As we saw, a strong chain of survival can improve the chances of survival and recovery for victims of cardiac arrest. The outcomes of this incident show that preparedness, training, quick action, and focus saved a life. We'd like to call folks up to receive a Heart Saver Heroes Award and thank them for their quick action at the football game. Kat Savini.
Just stay right up there, I'll take a picture.
I should have put these in a better order. I apologize. Aaron Sumner. Aaron Roy. See when you come up. Amy Martin. Becky Carloni, and I apologize if I'm not pronouncing. Jenna Brunelli. And Dr. Bayana.
I just hit 911, I didn't do anything.
You know, that's still really important.
Still-
And I have one last one, Kate Connell, who's a student, and I will just say, if I can get a quick picture of all of you
Yes,
together,
we'll do
that would be
that.
really great.
We'll do it this way, you guys come this way. Yeah. I got Becky's. Mine says Becky, but I'll take it.
Oh, it does? Did I get it?
I've been called worse. No disrespect to Becky.
Thank you so much.
So thank you for recognizing us this evening, but truly, I just want to step to the side. I happen to just be a parent and a superintendent of a football game. What I saw from these folks and how they just bang, 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 our colleague from Sharon, because it was part of the game that day, I mean, they just went into, from watching him go down and helping him go down, to getting the defibrillator, to going into stuff that I've never seen in my entire life, literally in front of me. And of course, dear to my heart, having the student who is thinking about this field be there and watching it happen. Truly, truly awesome, and you saved a life. So congrats.
And I will say,
Really.
this doesn't happen very often, that this many bystanders are there to react. We're lucky if any bystanders react, so it is truly remarkable. So
I was
it's a
there.
coordinated effort, so thank you.
Thank you for recognizing,
Yeah,
we
thank
appreciate
you.
it very much.
Okay, thank you for that. We appreciate the recognition for our staff and students and bystanders. So if you were here for presentations, we're not offended if you want to leave. If you have your awards, you're feel free. That's about as good as the night gets some nights. So we love when our students and staff are presented with awards.
Can we take 3 minutes?
Yeah.
We'll allow a 3-minute break for the purposes of our young students to come over and share their bracelets. So we'll take 3 minutes, if that's right, Mr. Chairman?
We'll get set up for the next thing and the girls can.
You got your bracelets?
Back to our regularly scheduled programming. So our next item is Gale Associates.
Mr. Chairman, through you to everyone here tonight, I'd like to introduce from Gale Associates our colleagues Bree and Kyle, and our other colleague from the contractor side, Lawrence Lynch, Melissa, who are here with us tonight. So I'll turn it over to them for all their formal names, titles, and the project itself. So welcome to all three of you.
Thank you, Dr. Bayana. So, as Dr. Bayana said, I am Bree Sullivan. I am the Chief Civil Engineer at Gale Associates Weymouth office, and I have with me Kyle Rowan, who on the project was the construction project manager, and I am the senior project manager on the project. So the agenda for tonight, we're going to run through a few items. I promise we'll be brief. A little bit about Gale, and then we'll talk about the project team, introduce the project team. We'll go over the project goals, project timeline. It's a little out of sequence. We're going to do the site flyover video at the end. And closing statements after the questions. We'll do the site flyover. So over the last 23 odd years, we've been lucky enough to do over 20 million square feet of turf fields in New England and actually all over the eastern seaboard. During that time, we've seen quite a lot. A couple of similar projects here. Bishop Stang High School in Dartmouth, Massachusetts. It's actually North Dartmouth. We just finished that last construction season. Hopkinton High School there was a few years ago, and a couple of other ones down on the bottom. The two at the top were recipients for the American Sport Builders Association Distinguished Facility Award. Next year, we will be submitting this facility for the Distinguished Facility Award.
Okay, thank you, Bree. I'm going to take over now and jump into the project team that was involved in this project. You just met Bree and myself. Two other folks from Gale that were involved was Melissa Desjardins, our landscape architect, as well as John Lindberg, the principal in charge of Gale. We also had several sub-consultants involved in this project. We had Zenith Land Surveyors, who did the land survey, Vincent A. Diorio, who was the electrical design engineer, LEC Environmental, who was our environmental consultant, and Novus Group, who performed the geotechnical engineering services. Jumping over to the Norton team, this list of folks here was the contact list for the duration of the project. Most of the folks here attended most, if not all, of our design phase meetings and weekly construction meetings that lasted all of 27 weeks straight. Wade Lazat, Director of Facilities, was the point of contact for this project. We also worked very closely at one point or another with everyone on this list. And the general contractor for the project, Lawrence Lynch Corporation. On their team was Chris Lynch, the president of the company, as well as Melissa Rogerson, who Joe just introduced. She was the project manager there every step of the way. There was also E.J. Sousa, the construction operations manager, and Peter Falconeri, the site supervisor. So into the meat of the presentation, we'll talk about project goals. So what was Norton's vision and what was ultimately constructed? This image is probably familiar to everyone here, I would hope. This is the existing site. This photo is actually...
Hopefully the last time we see it.
Yes, forget about this completely. This was an aerial of the project site. This was actually taken in May of this year, so this was about a week or two before Lawrence Lynch broke ground and started construction. The aspects of this picture that were included in the project is Robert R. Adams Field down the bottom left, and then these two existing softball fields here in the center, as well as this grass area south of the Yale School parking lot. So we'll go field by field. We're going to start with Robert R. Adams. The existing facility was a 6-lane track with a natural grass field interior, as well as 4 dated athletic lights that were still functional and nice.
Semi-functional.
Semi-functional. So proposed conditions of this project included the construction of a new turf field in the center of the track that was suitable for football, soccer, lacrosse, field hockey, and also had Norton's center field logo. And around this field, we have an 8-lane track, so expanding from 6 lanes to 8. And this included javelin and discus, 2 long jump pits, high jump, and new fencing all the way around the track and around the perimeter. And next, this one's a little harder to see, but 4 lights popped up on the screen here. So we have 4 new athletic lights in all 4 corners of the fields, as well as an LED scoreboard down in the bottom right that's also audio equipped. And lastly, for the track, we have the cross-country track going around the southern perimeter. And so to give you an idea of what the plan to reality kind of looks like, we'll jump to the next slide here. And this is what we have today. So this is an aerial of that site taken in November of 2022, so only 3 or 4 weeks ago. As you can see, the track is a different color than on the plans. That's just kind of how it goes. But Norton did choose to elect to go forward with this these purple exchange zones that you see here, which is actually something pretty new to the industry and pretty exciting. We think it looks great, and we're probably going to do it on every track from here on out. So you guys are the pioneers on that one. So congrats. Next, we'll jump over to the center field here. So the 2 existing softball fields. This was natural grass, gravel and clay infield, so on and so forth. So starting with the turf field layout, we have this here. So this was a synthetic turf field suitable to baseball, softball, soccer, lacrosse, and field hockey, also with new perimeter fencing all the way around. We also had new athletic lights on this field, 6 this time, here, 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 and here, as well as a new LED scoreboard down in that right-hand corner. Next slide, we have the dugouts suitable for both baseball and softball in both corners, as well as the baseball and softball batting tunnels, shown here on the left. And next we have our spectator and pedestrian areas. So we have 5 spectator bleachers, here, here, and here. 2 plazas up north of the field and the main entrance plaza here. And then lastly, we tie all of that together with our walkways, landscaping, as well as some reconstruction of the parking lot, existing parking lot at the entrance to the field. And this is what it looks like today, November 2022. All right, last area. So this you all recognize is south of the Yale School, that natural grass area. Natural dirt, I heard that, yeah. So proposed conditions here was 5 new bituminous asphalt tennis courts with a 10-foot fencing going around the entire perimeter. That's that here. And eventually, the coloring of these courts will be Canadian violet on the inbounds area and Cape Gray on the outside. Some of you who have seen the site may know at this point that it doesn't quite look like this yet. Due to the weather conditions at the time, the decision was made that it was in the town's best interest and the best interest of the facility to postpone this coloring until the spring to give it the best chance of lasting long and looking good. So that will be taking place spring of 2023, probably April or May. So with that in mind, this is what it looks like today. Keep in mind the coloring is coming in the spring. All right, I'm going to give you guys a brief overview of the project timeline. I know there's a lot to do tonight, so I'll try and make this as quick as I can. Basically, this project all started when a master planning request for proposal was issued by Norton back in June of 2017. That contract was awarded to Gale in July of 2019. From that, we created 10 design iterations of the whole site. This is the one we landed on, or that Norton landed on, I should say. Obviously, this doesn't look exactly what was actually constructed, but that's what always happens. This is just our template, and we build from there. The full design contract was awarded in June 2021, and from there we go all the way to final design documents being completed in March of 2022, so just this past March. From there, those documents go out to bid. During the bid phase of this project, we got 4 bids from Lawrence Lynch Corporation, RAD Sports, Argus Construction, and Green Acres, all familiar and big players in this realm of athletics construction. After some research and checking references, it was determined that Lawrence Lynch was the lowest responsible bidder, eligible bidder, and we issued the intent to award to them on April 7th. And then the construction contract was executed shortly thereafter on April 26th, and construction started May 9th. We reached substantial completion November 8th of 2022. That's when the full facility was able to be used, full beneficial use for the school. So that comes out to about a 7-month project duration. Here are some in-construction photos. This is all of Field 2, so you'll see the base stone down that's under the turf. This is the start of the turf curb when that was getting put in, the game shade dugouts. This is the entrance paver area, and then we have some photos of the turf laid down and the landscaping as that was going in. On the track, it's a little more obvious. We've got what was an attempt at taking a photo in the same spot by me for however many weeks, so it's close enough. In this photo, you can see the natural turf inside the track had been removed. And then we jump to the next one. The track itself is now gone, and the under turf drainage is starting to be installed. At this point, the base stone for the turf field is being installed, and you can see that the athletic lights in the back have been removed as well. Now you can see the new athletic lights have been installed in pretty much the same location. You can see the stone looks a little nicer. This is after they laser graded to get that good planarity. And the track bituminous pavement is down as well. Jump to the next one. The turf is laid down. And then lastly, this would have been about a month and a half ago or a month ago. The track surfacing and striping is down, the turf is down and secure, and everything's all wrapped up and people are on the field. So we will point out there are a few remaining items that are not yet constructed. This is due to supply chain issues and or weather, so nothing in Lawrence Lynch's control. These items include the tennis courts color surfacing, which we talked about. There's also both scoreboards at the stadium field, or Robert R. Adams Field, and Field 2, as well as the flagpoles around Field 2. And there are a bunch of smaller items. These were included on what's called a punch list, where we go around and we determine what still needs to be done. Lawrence Lynch is taking care of those this month. I'll quickly touch on project alternates. So alternates are basically wish list items for those who don't know this jargon. There are things that can be included in the project if the budget allows. We are happy to report that 5 of 6 alternates were ultimately included in this project, all under budget. That includes landscaping at Field 2, the flagpoles at Field 2, safety netting, the pedestrian plazas, and the baseball and softball batting tunnels. And this is just a summary of that schedule we just went through. So master planning contract in July 2019, all the way down to what we anticipate to be the date of final completion in April or May of 2022 when those courts are surfaced, for about a 3-year total project life cycle.
So that'll be 2023, right?
Correct, 2023. You got me. All right, Bree, pass it back off to you.
So the entire committee and everybody we worked with in Norton was great to work with. This is really just the start of our relationship. We're going to continue to be available to the community for follow-up visits. We have a few follow-up visits coming up that in the spring we'll come back out to look at the remaining items that need to be completed, and we'll do a 1-year follow-up. It's part of the project. We'll do a 1-year follow-up, walk the site, see if anything needs attention, and provide a site visit report for that. But I do want to say that Gail is your engineer. If there are issues with the field, call us first, and we can help facilitate communication with who you need to communicate with for that, whatever needs to be done. We want to assist you as this field, as you use this field through the years. Please feel free to call us and we'll come out.
Questions?
I'm glad to hear that you guys are still going to be around, because after meeting with you guys for the amount of times that we have, it's a hard goodbye, right? So now it can be like a gradual goodbye, right? We'll still be able to see you.
Definitely.
It was awesome working with you guys, all of you. I mean, this has been something we've been talking about for 6 years. So it's and it's nice to see you guys in real time, right? Because I'm so used to seeing Zoom meetings and stuff. So.
Oh, and I think Kyle only got upset once on the project.
And I think John asked the question that he didn't like.
Sean asks a lot of questions.
Yes, he does.
That's why we keep him around.
Yeah.
I think it's important, I know you're going to be moving to the video in a second. I think it's really, really important as someone who's been involved with a number of projects, and I've known Gail going back to when I sat on your side in my hometown as a school committee member, taking on projects, a lot of them to do with asphalt and roofs and all this other stuff back in the day. I think one of the things that's really great about Gail is that this is their wheelhouse. I mean, this is an area that they are the experts in. And I think the second part is the relationship that happened with Lawrence Lynch, which is the first relationship really between Gail and Lawrence Lynch and then us. So we'd like to recognize Lawrence Lynch as well for doing all the great things, and we're just going to continue to put pressure on you every day to make sure that punch list is done. But I think at the end of the day, it's been a great project, and a project that I think will come in under budget, or right there, if you will. I think it's about $6,800 left right now, or in that ballpark. So that's a good thing. I think the last part too is what you guys just stated, and this is something that I had told my team, which is when Gail comes into a school district, Gail hangs around, right? And so when you need a certain project done, or you need some follow-up, and for example, a year later you come back, you give us a progress report or a status report, so that things don't go sour, and you can fix something if you really need to, before it becomes a problem and all of that stuff. So thank you to the parties, and yes, 27 straight weeks of meeting was a lot of time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, speaking as a fall sports parent, a soccer player and a spring tennis player, there was such excitement at the end of the spring season, fall season, to be able to get on those fields for soccer and senior nights for boys and girls, and I pestered Aaron a lot to try and make that senior night happen, and then obviously, having football, who was, without a home for so many weeks, be able to get a couple of games in, I was you know, I had to walk her through with Dr. Bayetta, and I was like awestruck that this was, you know, 5 years worth of blood, sweat, and tears for us, for the town, for you guys. And I, personally, I couldn't be happier. I think things look great. And I look forward to that relationship continuing. And, you know, when it gets all finalized and all that process is done, I think it'll just look that much better. And I, you know, I think it puts Norton on the map. We've become a destination. You know, Aaron, I'm sure his phone's ringing off the hook because everybody wants a piece of what we have to offer. So thank you. Thanks to Lawrence Lynch.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I would just say one final thank you to everybody who came out and actually voted to support the funding for this.
Very well said.
Without them, we would not be here today. I've only been to a couple of football games, but I gotta tell you, kind of going off of Mr. Sheedy, it's a different feeling. It really is. And sorry, let me rephrase that. I've only been to a couple of football games on the new field. I've been to numerous ones in the old field. The feeling when you walk in and see that field now, it's a world of change. It really is. It's amazing. You actually feel like, you know what, this is what we're supposed to look like right here. And we spent too many years not looking like that, and apologies to all the students who came and went and didn't get to have this, but we're looking forward to the ones who get to have it going forward.
I feel like our students have always had a lot of school pride or school support for our sports, but now to see them walking around, like, they're proud. They're proud of where they come from, and that's, as a parent, that's awesome. Yeah.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
We had a little overview, I think.
Yeah, let's see that video.
I think,
Peter, what do you got? Yes, I love the new field tonight. Got to see a couple games tonight. Love the new fields and can continue to just cheer the Lancers on the new fields for many years to come because goodbye to the old and hello what to do.
Absolutely.
thank you, sir. All right, let's see if I can get out of this thing. There we go. And let's give it a try, shall we?
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're gonna be using that over and over again, don't you worry.
All right, so the next thing we have is vote to approve the minutes of the November 10th open meeting. Everybody had a chance to go over those?
Yes.
Questions, comments, changes?
No.
All right, entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. One abstention. Carolyn, you were yes as well?
I was a yes.
Thank you. Okay, next item is the warrants information, Mrs. Cohen.
I reviewed and approved the following warrants: school expense warrants, November 10th, 2022, $463,324.05. December 1st, 2022, $601,421.75. School payroll warrants, November 3rd, 2022, $1,120,022.56. November 17th, 2022, $1,181,668.43. December 1st, 2022, $1,130,938.71. They wish to enter them into public record.
Thank you, Mrs. Cohen. Next is the student representative updates, Malia and Antonio.
So from the LG, we have, from the L, we have the 2 students that were recognized tonight for raising $700. And then we have, for the next 2 weeks, we are going to have Spirit Days. So each day we will have a different fun way to dress up. Crazy Hat Day, Crazy Hair Day, Ugly Sweater, Flannel, Team Jersey, 80s, Superhero, etc. Should be a fun thing to do each day from now until vacation. Next Friday we will also be having our annual Hey PTO bingo game where Mr. G calls out numbers and we have winner per classroom come on and pick up a prize for at least 2 full games of bingo. Good fun. And then we hope to make the next couple weeks fun and exciting for all as we get to our first Maid vacation of the year and turn to calendar to 2023.
Okay, so from the JCS is excited to have the Polar Express roll into town in the next couple of weeks. Students are preparing with math and reading activities about the winter and the classic book. 3rd graders are practicing for their winter concert on the 22nd, and the whole school is excited to get together for a big holiday sing-along on the 23rd just before break. From Norton Middle School, the annual Turkey Carnival, sponsored by Student Council, was held to benefit the Norton Cupboard of Kindness. This activity included games in the gymnasium that students could participate in for a $1 donation or a donation of canned goods. The students of the middle school stepped up in a huge way and shattered all previous records for the event. The NMS community raised $2,600 in one day for the Cupboard of Kindness, along with 8 large boxes full of canned goods. The students and staff of NMS have much to be thankful for and are very proud of their phenomenal record of giving back to their community. And that's all we have for
Thank you. Next is the strategic plan overview. Dr. Bada.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this evening, we bring forward for vote and final recognition and then implementation our strategic plan going forward. And with me this evening, we have Dr. O'Neill, our assistant superintendent, Karen Winsper, our director of instructional technology, Casey Russo, our special education coordinator, and Vinny Searcy, our director of PPS and SEL guidance throughout the district. This is a 6-month culmination activity, if you will, that started actually pre-COVID. Because some of the things that are here are things that we started to talk about and had as part of our Vision 2022. But with the pandemic hitting us, we took some right turns and left turns and weren't able to do some certain things. Tonight is really about getting the community, and thank you to our colleagues from Norton Media for being here, to really recognize what we're trying to do as a district over the next, the remainder of this year and the next 3+ years. And it's really grounded on some fundamentals that we've had as a district for quite a long time, but also trying to really, if you will, reteach or actually introduce not new concepts, but concepts that we as a district really believe we have to do more of and better with. We have some really large goals within this plan. I would say some of the probably largest or biggest pieces of the pie that we've had in the 10 years that I've been here. And really, really proud of it for a number of different reasons. Number one, we need to shoot for an A. We don't shoot for C's in Norton, we shoot for an A. You know, you guys know my philosophy about that. And then the second part about it, that's really the most important, and that is that this vision is really about the children of Norton. Pre-K through 12, those in need of our support academically, those who need further enrichment, those who want to continue to go onto the workplace, serve in the military, go into college, or whatever it may be. And that's one of the reasons why we're here tonight. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Dr. O'Neill to begin the first part of it.
Is there a clicker?
Right here.
All right. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so as Dr. Baya mentioned, we're actually going to take you not just through our strategic plan tonight, but a few other things as well. We are going to talk about our integrated multi-tiered systems of supports. Mr. Searcy is going to give you an update on PBIS in Norton and the status of that. And then Dr. Bayetta will talk about benefits-based accountability and what that means to us as a district. And then we'll go through a bunch of questions as well. So the Vision 2026 has 3 core goals. The first one is developing the whole child. The second one is looking at high quality professional learning. And then the third is the portrait of the graduate skill sets. So we're going to kind of go through each of those for you tonight and talk about some of the targets that we have there. So the first one, developing the whole child, is really about integrating SEL and academics. And as you'll see a little bit later on, when we look at our integrated multi-tiered systems of supports, that's exactly what that means, is looking at every single student and finding the best ways that we can reach them as a scholar, as an athlete, as a community member, and making sure that we're providing not just the academic supports and skills that they need to be successful after leaving Norton High School, but also making sure that we're reaching them as an individual. The first goal in developing the whole child has 2 primary goals. The first one talks about SEL. Vinny and I, along with one of our BCBAs, Carrie Sumner, just wrote a grant, and we were awarded a $150,000 grant from the Department of Education for us to specifically focus on SEL. And the way that we wrote this grant, we really looked specifically at our integrated tiered systems of supports. We are going to be using some of this funding to support PBIS in grades K-12. We'll be using some of this funding to implement a grade appropriate SEL curriculum in our schools for all students. And then we'll also be using this funding to identify an SEL screener. So that way it's a quick assessment where we could take a look at all of our students and kind of see how they're doing and where they are. And that way, if there are students that are having challenges or difficulties, we can catch them and provide supports as needed before things really flare up. The second major goal is to prepare all students to be college, career, and life ready. This is where that goal, around 90% reading by grade level, 90% at grade level in the area of reading by the end of 3rd grade, which is a huge goal and something we're spending a lot of time having conversations about. What does instruction look like in our classrooms? How do our reading specialists and interventionists support students in the classroom? And what are the tools that our teachers need in order to be successful in this area? This goal also looks at the formalization of more data teams in our schools, not just at a grade level PLC, but looking at data across grade levels, across even at JCS and LGN together. And it also looks at our tiered systems of support. So there's a lot of goals that go into this developing the whole child. When you look, I think there's 8 strategies overall in all of these targets. And this is where I know I and Vinny will be living a good majority of our time from now until 2026. So very excited about these. Talking a lot about our interventionists and reading specialists, providing tutoring to students in grades 2 through 5 that may be below grade level, centralizing all of our student data into a single platform so that we can help teachers make the most educated decisions about the way that our students are learning and how they learn best. And also a big partnership with PBL Works to support project-based learning in all of our schools as well. So that is developing the whole child. I'm gonna turn it over to Karen to talk about PD.
I get 2 slides, Dinesh, that's it. They've limited me because I talk too much.
She gets the whole next meeting.
So, yeah, they literally give me 2 slides. So Jen and I, we collaborate quite a bit on professional learning. I mean, I think over my time here in Norton, it's always been that, oh, here's a new tech tool and here's something that we need to train the staff on. But we're really looking to, move away from that, and, we have digital learning specialists who are doing some coaching of our staff, as well as our literacy and math specialists. So one of the things that we've tried to be a little bit more innovative in our professional development, offer different opportunities for staff to have choice. And this year especially, we have some staff who have really chosen and something that's of interest to them, whether it be a book club. I think all the administrators are running book clubs for staff. We have some UDL, which is the Universal Design for Learning, kind of differentiating for students. So we are moving forward, trying to really get across, we're always learning, we're always trying to do better. Of course, the SEL, the social emotional learning piece, we all need professional development in that, so that's a key piece. But then we also are looking at the partnership that we have with Leslie University, and I know that we have the trauma course, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we've had a huge number of staff already participate, and so we're looking to move them to level 2, level 3, so that has been very beneficial for our staff.
Over 125 of our staff have taking part in the first graduate course. There's 4 different courses leading to a certificate. I think we have 50 or so that have taken the second course, and then a handful that are taking 3 and 4. So they've really.
But that makes sense.
Yep. Yeah. Yes. You wouldn't need everybody to go through that whole process. You would be certain staff that really need to develop those skills, work with that particular population. But in general, it's sort of the overarching philosophy on how to approach students.
Great. And again, we have this very vague instructional technology down here. And the reason for that is we're very excited in the instructional technology department because we do have the digital learning specialists. But it's not just about the stuff, right? Of course, oops. You talked for too long. I know, where's that? It's not just about the stuff, right? The tech, that is something that we've that been very supported by the town to be able to get new Promethean boards in our elementary schools. We're looking to move forward at the middle school. And again, it's almost been 10 years since they've, the high school renovation project. So I think that's next year, right? 2013. Yes. So that's been 10 years. So when we start thinking about the boards and the projectors and things, that's all in a cycle as well. So there's the hardware piece, but there's also the professional development and the supporting for staff, and then really trying to get our students, we made some transitions in the last strategic plan, kind of moving away from the computer labs to more of a STEAM space. We've had some collaboration with the facilities department to really make over those spaces. And then our computer science program, we're really trying to, I don't know if you've seen any of the pictures that have been posted. This was CS Computer Science Education Week, and so we've had some partnerships between the high school, Miss Murphy's classes, and almost every single class at the Hay has walked over and they've done some collaborative, almost unplugged activities. So we're really trying to do more integration with instructional technology. So that's it for me. Portrait of a Graduate.
This is probably no project that I took longer to work on as a superintendent and took on as an initiative in 2017 than the Portrait of a Graduate. That's how long it's been thus far. And what we did then, just to remind some of the newer members of the committee, what we did then is we had 15 or so community, Wheaton College, 2 vice presidents of HR, college professors, we had parents, we had staff, we had administrators. And what we did is we said, when you leave Norton Public Schools, what are the skill sets that we want every graduate to have, regardless of what they're doing next? And so what we saw in what we came up with at that time were the 6 that we know here: personal responsibility, social cultural awareness, creativity and innovation, critical thinking and problem solving, flexibility and adaptability, and information communication and technology literacy, as Karen just mentioned. And these were the 6 after also surveying all of our parents. It was actually our biggest survey result at the time. We had over, if I remember correctly, over 300 responses about what we wanted to see our students have as they leave NPS. And so as part of this Vision 2026, we want to begin that implementation of the POG skill sets at appropriate age level, and to be able to give feedback to families about innovation and creativity and responsibility and all of that. And we want to formalize this process for both our teachers, our students, and our parents, so that it's a 3-way communication about how a student. It's always great to get a report card that says, your child works hard. Your child's really nice in school. You know, any of those basic, and I'm generalizing. We want to take that a little deeper and say, hey, your child is a responsible student. You know, they are a responsible child in the classroom. They are able to and utilize those skill sets as a way to also have students promote themselves as they're leaving the district. And then lastly, how are we going to better transition our students from school to school? Remember, we're a school district that has a pre-K3 with a K3 that comes into a 4-5, that's a major transition. Stop there, transition to middle school 6-8, transition again to 9-12. Very, not a traditional, if you will, pre-K to 12 transition process, which has a lot of, has significant issues that come up, not only within our specialized programs, but any and all students, from who you ride the bus with. For the first time, you go to 4th grade, the next thing you know, you're in a 4 to 8 bus. What does that mean, right? And so on and so forth. So we also want to take a look at our 12 plus, and the 12 plus would be not only our students who are graduating, but our students that stay with us until 22, and then also 12 plus for me means, what are we doing to follow through with the students who just graduated? Where are they 2 years out? Are they still in college? Are they still attending BSU? Are they still doing the same major? Did they leave BSU? Are they still in the military? Are they still working at the local company? And that's also part of the 4 pathways that you've already actually voted and supported: the innovation, the college and career ready, the CBTE, Voc Tech, and then what we originally were calling alternative. I think we're looking to call it more work-based development. Not students who are interested to necessarily become a plumber or electrician or any of that, but a student who's actually just entering the workforce. All of this has to tie in with reaching all students from day 1. I'll turn it over to Jen.
Can I ask a question for you?
Yeah.
Please.
Can you bring that slide back up, actually?
Sure.
3.2, create a formal teacher, student, and parent accountability and assessment report for each student. So 2 questions in, I guess. The first one is how do we do it? And the second one is, it reads like we're talking about parent accountability, but I assume it's accountability and assessment for the student, not accountability for parents.
It's not accountability for parents. I apologize for that. But the idea is to have parents be part of that system. In other words, we want to make sure that parents are having those conversations with us about how the student is doing within these POGs. And the reason for that is, a lot of times a parent will call the school and say, my child's math isn't very good. That's great. They should be doing that. But we also want to talk to parents about how are you seeing your child in terms of their being responsible. Are they? Because sometimes what happens in school and at home are 2 different things, and that collaborative effort can be very positive for students. Remember that right now, within our Panorama platform, we track students' discipline. Their daily grades are up there on a daily basis. Their attendance are there on a daily basis. Their survey results are there for them, and that gives us that green, yellow, red component that we get to see. And once a teacher starts to see a student not do as well in homework, for example, they might also be taking a look at the survey at the Panorama platform and noticing that the student has had an attendance issue, not only in their class but maybe not coming to school at all. So.
Right. So I guess what I'm asking is, and we may not be there yet, but when we're looking to formalize that process and determine if there's proper development I'm assuming this is for the 6 skill sets.
Yep.
So, grades are great, and
that's wonderful, but something like critical thinking, like how do we formalize that process so that we're saying, oh yeah, you know, little Johnny can critically think.
So that's gonna be the next step, is that of us creating, what does it really mean by grade level?
All right, so we're not there yet.
We're not there yet. That's gonna be the major component of working with the staff and saying, what does that look like in a kindergarten class? What does that look like in a 12th grade class? And how do you report that out one way or the other?
Gotcha.
So I'm going to walk you through the IMTSS process now. And as part of your packet tonight, you received our newly designed IMTSS handbook that we created this summer as well. And so these slides are really to guide you through this document and explain it in hopefully less words than this all has here for you. So what is IMTSS? It is the use of tiered supports for students based on where they may fall both academically or social, emotional, behavioral wellness for any given area or criteria. We may find that a student is really successful in ELA or reading or writing, but they have a more difficult time in math or science. So the process of tiered systems of supports allows students to get individualized attention or instruction based on their need in whatever the area may be. You may find that a student does really well in like a tier 1 regular general curriculum in some cases, and then they may need more interventions or supports in other areas. What's different about an integrated system from just a multi-tiered system that you most often hear about is the integration between the social emotional wellness and the academic. And Casey in a few minutes is going to talk to you about the importance of connecting those two areas and how they impact each other. This is not a special education initiative. That's why I'm presenting it to you and not Vinny and Casey. We felt that it was really important for us to be really clear about that. This is for all students, regardless if they have an IEP or a 504 or not. So it's about improving those outcomes for all of our students here in Norton. So we've had a lot of conversations over the last probably 18 months about the challenges that we've seen in our classrooms and with our students and the gaps that we saw. And what we felt that we needed to do is we really needed to look at our tiered instruction. What is our core curriculum that all students are receiving? What interventions are taking place in the classroom? And then what interventions might happen outside of the classroom or with someone who may have a different background, for example, in math or reading or special education. And we knew that as a team, this had to be our goal for this upcoming year. So we did a 3-day administrative retreat. All of the instructional staff from central office, all of our principals and assistant principals were there, and we were at Wheaton, and we actually partnered with the University of Missouri. And they came out and we did 3 days of really intense study about the tiered systems of supports, but also reflecting on what do we already have in place and where are the areas that we really need to work this year. So we did that this summer. And then we also created a district-wide professional learning calendar. So our entire year is devoted to IMTSS at all 5 buildings. And staff and the teams at each building are working collaboratively to support all of our teachers. It's overwhelming. It's a huge, huge, huge undertaking. Shannon's nodding her head in the back. It is a huge undertaking. But the way that we're trying to look at it is that this is what's going to hold all of our other things together. We've talked in the past about SEL and how if a student isn't ready to learn because they're having a difficult time, you're not going to get the academics out of them that we need. We always talk about SEL as the plate. We're not adding something to your plate. The SEL is the plate and everything else goes on top of that. IMTSS, we're taking that same perspective of we can integrate our SEL, we can integrate PBIS, we can integrate Panorama and our data teams. It all goes together to make sure that we're supporting our students in the best way that we're able to. So I keep telling the staff and our team, and sometimes they have to tell me and remind me, like, it's not going to happen all at once. Rome wasn't built in a day. We're not going to solve all of our problems right out of the gate. So we have 3 goals for this year.
Jen, real quick.
Yes, please.
Previous slide, you mentioned when you guys had this retreat, we
Mhm.
looked at what we had, and we looked at their projection. How did we match up? Like, were we way behind the times? Were we on task? Were we?
That's actually a great question, and it really varied based on the building. Our elementary schools had a lot of really great structures in place. We had weekly PLCs where grade levels would sit down together and have conversations about student learning, and they would look at data. We have our math coach and our literacy coach that work K to 5, and they do a ton of that work with our teachers, and they're an incredible asset to the elementary schools because they're able to say, okay, it looks like your students are having a difficult time with this. Why don't we do some lesson planning together and we can go through this process. The elementary teams also had elementary buildings also had student support teams that were already built at that level. That is where you may bring a student that you have a concern about to a larger team and you say, this is a student in my classroom. These are the things that I've tried. I've tried working with them in this way. I've tried this chart system. I've tried this intervention. What else should I do? And it's almost like when you think about Grey's Anatomy, how they bring a problem into the stage and they talk through different ideas and they think maybe it's this, and have we thought about that? Have we run this test? That's what the SST team meetings are, but for academics or for social emotional behavioral wellness. So those things were already set up and good to go there. The biggest challenges that we've had in grades 6 through 12 this year is putting some of those things in place. So we didn't have the structure for PLCs at the high school. The middle school, it's based on a team setup, so that's naturally there and available. We just weren't using it in that way. So those have been some of the things that we've had to work on. When we get a little bit further in, I'm going to talk about the assessments and the core instruction and all of those things. But I think we've made really great progress from July when we sat down as an admin team and had these reflective conversations to now where we are. And each building is in a place that they're making those steps forward based on what they need the most. Of course. So our 3 goals this year is really just a general understanding for all staff about what is IMTSS and why does Jen O'Neill keep talking to me about it. So that was the primary goal. We really want our staff to review what our current systems are and identify needs. So at each building level, there is an IMTSS team that supports the building principal and supports the staff. And they have a lot of these conversations about, how are we going to support a student, or what other information do we need? And then the use of database decision making to really start making decisions about students and having those data conversations be at the center of our PLCs and our student support team meetings. And so far, those are the things that we've been primarily focusing on. And we'll say, okay, yes, we know we have to do that, but that's not one of these 3 things. So let's put it on the list, we'll put it in the parking lot, and we'll get back to it. And that will be something that we do work on, but we want to not, bite off more than we can chew in this first time. So I'm going to turn it over to Casey. A universal screener. All of our students take the STAR reading assessment. In kindergarten and grade 1, they take the STAR early literacy. That might be our first indicator that a student may need intervention. We have the BAS, the Benchmark Assessment System, which is a reading comprehension assessment that we give to all of our students, basically from February in kindergarten all the way through the end of grade 5. We have curriculum-based measures, which we are just recently used with our kindergarten and first graders that looked at, do they know their letters? Do they know their letter sounds? So that's some information that we're able to use. It might be anecdotal classroom evidence, where the teacher is providing writing samples or student responses that perhaps are showing that they have difficulty. It could be We have attendance data that we look at all the time. We have behavioral data that we look at. So it really depends on what the individual student challenge is and what we have available to us.
Sometimes the lack of data is data in and of itself. So if we don't have it, then we're questioning why that is and how we can go about fixing it. So this is the MTSS triangle, which many people have probably heard of. It's just known as the triangle in many circles. So this breaks down how students should be getting tiered levels of support. So in Tier 1, all of our students are receiving Tier 1 support. So universal supports for all students, no matter their disability. Anyone that comes to school should be getting some sort of universal support. That's the general curriculum type stuff. The universal accommodations that we can put into place for flexible seating and visuals and things along those lines. Some behavior SEL type things that we can put in place for all kids, access to counseling, things along those lines. And that should be, although it's applicable for all students, it really should be covering 80 to 90% of our student population. The next level is our Tier 2 support. So those are the targeted supports for some of the students who are at risk. So those are the more intense intervention, more higher level interventions. So not necessarily going to the interventionist, but having some more direct support in the classroom setting from the teacher, or having someone pop in, the interventionist or a speech therapist come and do some RTI, things along those lines. We're seeing the kids struggling. Wait, strapping me. So again, that should be 5 to 10% of our student population getting those individual supports at a higher level. And then our Tier 3, so individualized support for the few students with intensive challenges. So those are the kids that are getting pulled for Title I, or going to see the reading and math interventionist that Jen was talking about. Maybe going to a lunch bunch instead of just having access to the counselor. They're going to the lunch bunch with friends, or having some sort of supportive peer grouping. They might have a behavior support plan or something along those lines in place. The important thing to remember with the triangle is that none of these things are special education interventions. So a student can be on an IEP and still be at any level of these tiered interventions. And every student should be receiving all that Tier 1 stuff. So even a student on an IEP is eligible to receiving all of those interventions. That's why I love that the little girl in the wheelchair is down here, because even though she's in a wheelchair, she may not be receiving any type of interventions aside from physical things along those lines. A student who is on an IEP could be anywhere on this spectrum, or within this triangle, I should say, in the hierarchy. It doesn't preclude them from getting the intervention services just because they're on an IEP. One of the things that we have run into, as well as many other districts, not just us, is that a student will be on an IEP for, say, a reading disability. And when they go to the IEP meeting, the teacher will say, or the parent will say, oh, they're struggling with math, can we put a goal on there for that? No, because they do not have a documented disability in math. An IEP is for a student who has a disability. It is not an intervention. So just because we're struggling in an area does not mean that we have a disability in that area. So really looking at students as a whole unit, the whole holistic approach and holistic view of a child to figure out where on this triangle they belong. But it's important to also note that within the triangle, the triangles are not separated like they have been previously. They used to be tiers, like a cake, where there's one on top of the other. These are all embedded. So just because you're receiving Tier 2 supports, you should also be receiving all the same stuff as the Tier 1. And if you're receiving Tier 3, you should also be receiving all the stuff that's within Tier 1 and Tier 2. There's nothing that says that one precludes or negates another.
I'm assuming there's like just a general image.
Yes,
Does those
of course, yes.
Do those
Yes.
percentages
So
are close to what we have here at Norton?
So, no, but, no, they're not. It's a goal. It's a goal.
So
our percentages are, our
I
triangles are a
think
little
it kind of
bigger.
depends, to be honest with you.
It depends on the area.
It depends on the area that we're talking
Yeah.
about, in the grade level and all of those kinds of things. So I think, 80 to 90%, when you're talking about interventions, what you're really saying there is 80 to 90% of the students are going to benefit from those interventions, right, across the board. And then as we move up, what you're looking for is that next level. Okay, so if out of that 90%, maybe we have 5% that actually need this in ELA, or we have 3% that need tier 2 in behavioral interventions. And then the next level was like, okay, so now we even need more intensive. So to kind of say, yes, those are general, I think it really depends on the area. I think you'd say after the pandemic and some of the things that have occurred, we're seeing kids who need more interventions around like the behavioral components, teaching some of the skills that they didn't get due to the pandemic. Those social interaction skills, for example. You know, pre-pandemic, I'd say we were pretty much lined up there, maybe even more in a positive end. Now, just like everybody else, we need more of those kinds of skills to be taught, those kind of school readiness, you know, those academic, pre-academic skills. So like, for example, our kindergartners, there's a lot more focus there because they didn't have the opportunity to practice. So we're putting more of those tier 2 interventions into place, and even some of our tier 3. Hopefully, you know, the next kind of group of kids who've come up and had a more normal experience by kindergarten, we won't need as many tier 2 interventions. But does that make sense? That's it.
And also, and I want to talk about this in a few minutes also, because we know that in some areas we don't have that 80 to 90%, what we're doing is we're looking at what does our core instruction look like in those areas. So if we have a lot of students that may be struggling in the area of math, we're looking at what are the resources that our teachers have. Is it a highly effective research-based math program that we're using? What professional development can we provide to staff so that they are able to meet the needs of the learners in their classroom? So we're really looking at that core instructional piece, and what are the interventions that any student could have access to during that class time to support them. So it could be that we're providing graphic organizers on a more frequent basis, or we're helping them to scaffold their work in a different way. So we're looking at all of those pieces. I actually will be coming to all of you either the next meeting or the meeting in January to talk about the elementary math review that we just completed, which was really, really exciting and you know, ready to move forward, which is great.
And I think a large part of this as well is looking at what the underlying skills are. So where the deficits may be happening might be in math, or it might be in reading, or whatever it might be. But looking to see what that true underlying skill deficit is. Is it an executive functioning thing, where we can't figure out how to organize our thoughts and organize our writing and our thinking and things like that? Is it a reading comprehension issue? And that's why solving word problems in math is difficult, because we can't find that key word, because our brain isn't processing that in the comprehension piece of it. So is it really that's underlying? So there's a lot of other pieces that are at play. So talking, like Jen was saying, like really trying to hone in on what that intervention is that's needed for those kids. So the research does show that identifying the kids with the concurrent issues and developing the interventions based on the risk status is impeded when systems are siloed. So one of the things that as a special education department we truly believe is that nothing happens in a silo. There is no education in a silo. So it's kind of related to this, but so the past year or so, we've been working towards pushing embedded groups, speech and OT and counseling into our specialized programs, versus the pull-out model, where someone goes and sits with speech therapists for a half hour and then goes back to class. Because it's great that you can apply that skill in a session with a professional for 30 minutes, but can you then take that pragmatic language and social communication and then use it in your classroom setting and with your peers and with your teacher and without that person sitting there? So really bringing all of these things together so that we're not siloed, but we're rather Joe used a term today talking about a salad bowl of approaches. So really putting things together and looking at that whole child. So with that SST approach and things like that, really being able to see things through everyone else's lens. I might have an English teacher and a guidance counselor, but I also have the school adjustment counselor who can see it through an SEL lens versus just the academics. So really putting things all together to figure it out that way. So the common relationships between academics and behavior. So removal from class because of behavior concerns thus results in students missing that academic content, right? Underlying attention deficits, now you're missing those social cues of instruction. Early academic challenges, social rejection from your peers and teachers, could be if a student is challenged in your classroom. they're gonna be seen as that kid. You're not necessarily gonna wanna have to deal with them, and the peers are gonna be like, oh, you're the troublemaker kid, right? And then frustration with academic challenges leads to disruptive and avoidant behaviors. So they're really all intermingled. So when we look at things as just having an issue with ELA or just having an issue with their reading, is it because they have missed the previous lessons about the letter identification and sounds and all of that stuff? And that's leading to the behavioral issues that we're having in English class because we're acting out to avoid it? Or is it really that they just don't want to read, or they're having attention things? So really trying to look at the whole child to try to figure out where the issues are coming from. It's super important for us to do this at the early ages as well, because we want kids to be able to enjoy school. We never want school to be a negative place for kids to come. And if we can address these things early on, kindergarten, first grade, preschool are negative places. It's going to be a negative place in 10th, 11th, and 12th as well. So really building up that confidence, trying to hone in on those skills at the young ages so we can try to suss out what's what and help kids move forward. And yeah, so the goals of IMTSS that we're doing, we're really trying to avoid that surface change in systems. Like Jen said earlier, this is all the plate. We're not trying to add anything else onto teachers' plates, which is kind of some of the pushback that we got over the summer at the beginning of the year, saying, oh God, it's one more initiative that we're doing. But this really isn't an initiative. It's more of a philosophical shift for all of us. We want to see increased support for all of our kids and success for all of our students, and decreased over-identification of disabilities. Our special education percentage is fairly high for a district of our size and makeup. We are at 23.8% of our population on an IEP right now, which is above the state average of 17. So really trying to figure out, and it's a fairly representative across all the disability categories. There's not one area that's much higher than another at this point. But we're really trying to figure out if some of those things could have been remedied prior to being put on an IEP through the IMTSS system, through our student intervention teams, if we could put these interventions in place to provide that support prior to getting on an IEP. We can't prove the negative, obviously, but we've got a number of kids already this year go through the ISD process that has been very successful, and we've avoided going to referral. Had that system not been in place, I can't say that they would have gone immediately to a special education referral, but I am confident in saying that some of the interventions that have been put in place have been highly successful, and they have not gone on to getting an IEP referral. So really just trying to build that deep, lasting philosophical change in all of us is really where we're coming from.
Probably a little off topic, I don't
No, that's
know
fine.
spot, but why, I mean, if we're at 23.8%.
23.7, don't scare me with the 28. No.
So we're obviously trying to decrease over-identification of disabilities.
Yes.
Why? I guess from the standpoint of like decreasing it means we're over.
We don't know that
We're over-exaggerating
but
some
we are-
disabilities, but why is that happening?
I think what we want
And I know
to do
that's
is,
probably-
I know, and it's a
That's
tricky
an onion
word thing to
question.
say here,
Yeah.
but I
Fill
think
in the
what we're
blanks,
trying
yeah.
to do here is say, okay, if we put the interventions in, right, especially earlier on, so we identify where the skill deficit is, right, so maybe it's not a disability, it can look like that if over time we don't address it, right, but if there's a skill deficit that we can put interventions in an earlier setting, in a more natural setting, and those students then respond to that, now we're moving that needle closer to their peers, right, to where they need to be at the grade level. Therefore, they're making that progress. I think sometimes what's happened in the past is we haven't had that ability to for whatever reason, there's a myriad of reasons here, but to put those interventions into place. And so, or as effectively as we should have early on in the process. And therefore, if they had a disability, the impact of that disability is stronger. Or it gets identified in a disability because, again, some of these disability categories, it's not like you take a blood sample and you have it, right? It's based on information. So I think that's led to some of our over-identification. And to be honest, in some cases, special education services were the only kind of, it's a game in town, right? And so we don't want that. We want
We want you to have other opportunities to build your skills and develop those skills in a, as I said, a more natural setting or with your peer groups. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to identify some of those skill sets and those gaps earlier on, be very targeted in our interventions, and maintain the students' growth in that area while also keeping them with their peer groups, if that makes sense.
Yes. Do you think it's being, again, I know this is probably a loaded question, do you think it's being driven from society? Do you think it's being driven from parents? Do you think it's being driven from specialists across the country? Like, what is, I guess?
Wow, that's a big question.
yeah.
I'm not sure everybody wants to.
The answer is yes.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
and I'm half joking, but yeah, I think there's a variety of factors that lead to this kind of thing, right? Some of it is specialist, kind of specialists, and I think sometimes you want to do what's best for your child, and sometimes when you feel that I have to do this because that's the only thing I have, right? That's the only option. Then yeah, as a parent, you're going to try to get those interventions. If the only way to get some of those interventions is through special education, you're going to pursue that. And there's lots of ways to make that happen. And so I think what we're saying is some of those interventions don't necessarily have to happen through special education. We can do that here and not have to put a child through an evaluation, a parent through a meet. We can do this in a more effective, timely manner.
Yeah,
And if it doesn't work, then we have data that helps us drive our individual behavior plans and our individual education plans to make those more effective for those students who do truly have a disability that truly need specialized instruction. Because again, you can have a disability but not necessarily need specialized instruction.
Exactly, and I think that's
So
become
that's,
evident.
so I guess,
Yeah.
yes, to all of those
Yeah.
things.
So, really quick, I'm not so sure about that, because theoretically, those externalities should exist in other towns as well. So
Well, they do.
The fact
They do,
that, that they exist here doesn't preclude them existing in Sharon or whatever. I think the idea of decreasing over-identification is a very good one. However, at the same time, I want to just caution us, because the state average is 17 and we're at 23, doesn't mean that we're over-identifying it either. Like, you can't just look, and you guys know I'm a data guy, but here's a number and here's a number, and we're higher than that number, we must be over-identifying. That's a false statement. That's not true.
Yeah, no, I don't
So-
know, yeah, sorry, Dennis. I don't know that that's necessarily the case. I think that there's been, even at the state level, there's a push, and you can see it through the MCAS specifically, with the accommodations that used to have to be identified via an IEP or a 504 for students to access things. And that list has now changed significantly to a lot of those accommodations are now universal, because there's a recognition that all students need to have different ways of learning. So I think that there's this shift that in order to get the accommodations that you needed to do testing or be in a certain area to get small group or whatever it might be, that you had to be on an IEP. And this is how we provided services to students, was by putting them on an IEP. But I think what Vinny is saying
But
too
again,
is
that
that
externality would exist other places.
it does in other places. I think that the, we went to a conference last week and I was talking to a couple of other special education directors in the area and who were across the state and not even just in the area, whose numbers are growing significantly and are comparable to ours at this point. So the state averages are probably going to start going up.
So I would make the argument that what we should probably do before we say we're over-identifying is not look at one point in time and say we're at 23.8, but look at our historical data over decades and say, okay, do we vacillate within that decade, and where are we versus the state average? And if the state average is kind of here, and we go back and forth over it, then I would make the argument that probably is pretty good data, to be honest with you. If the state average is like this and we're constantly above it, then then there's a problem in Norton, and it's not the externalities. It's not the parents want whatever. It's something systemic to how we're approaching declaring those people in need, those students in need of an IEP.
And I think that's actually what we're saying, is
Yeah.
that historically we have been above that average, and systematically this is one of the reasons to do that. Not to say, if we identify students and we do it appropriately, I don't care what the average is. But what I want to make sure is that systematically we are doing what's right by students and giving them the interventions in a way that, again, and then I think we're starting to see this in even how the state
as Casey said, is allowing certain accommodations to be made.
Yeah, I just don't want us to look at 2 points of data and say, we're clearly over identified, because I'm not so sure that's true.
Historically.
Yeah, yeah. But again, it's not about not providing student services that need them, it's about the best way to do that and the best manner in which we provide those. So we're not trying to not provide student services, but we are trying to build up success for everyone.
And again, I'm all for decreasing over identification, because it costs us money, as we all know. So, you know, I'm being very clear about that.
But I think even more important than it costs us money, there's other factors that are involved for students who go through that process and what it means for them and how they identify them. There's a lot of factors there, right? And if we can do that same kind of, those same interventions, provide them those same services in a place and in a manner that kind of goes with the flow, so to speak, without having to have them go through lots of testing and all of this other stuff, that's great. And again, if that doesn't work and we have students that have documented disabilities, and we will do what we need to do. But to me, it's not about that piece. It's really about getting to students in the least intrusive way as possible and giving them the most chance to improve.
Sorry for trying to solve the world problems.
Yeah, no. I can spend hours talking about this.
So can I just ask a question?
Sure.
So, Vinny, to your point, sort of offering those services, how do you do that? Sort of on the budget that we have and the staffing that we
The
have?
interventions? Well, we work very collaboratively.
Absolutely.
All of our departments work very collaboratively. So if it's a technology thing that we need to work on and they need to access something in a different way, we work very closely with Karen. Jen and Karen work very closely together. I mean, Jen and I have been working on the math program, field testing together about how we can use that to for all of our students to be able to access it, both as an intervention and in special education. There's a lot of collaboration across the board, and I think that having the interventionists at the younger grades has been crucial for that, allowing them to pull small groups and really do some of that targeted stuff, provide the consult to the classroom teacher, those resources and materials along the way. The school adjustment counselors really having some more support, being able to focus on the kids at the elementary level. We put in a school adjustment counselor for our BEST, our ASD, and our GRIT social emotional programs this year. So it really allowed her to focus on that K through 5 specialized population and freeing up the school adjustment counselors to do more groups and more work with the general education students that they have access to as a part of their interventions. So we're really trying to shift our resources
And ultimately, that is the entire goal of this whole IMTSS initiative, is reframing our thinking that special education and Title I are not the only games in town, that we have other things that we can do. We can use the collective brain power that we have on our teams, that we have in our schools, to identify ways that students can be supported in the general education classroom, whether it's in a small group or working with a teacher or providing a resource that works. It can't be, you know, we've talked for years and years and years about how all of these students are our students, and we have a collective responsibility to make sure that they're successful. But the practice hasn't always, you know, aligned with that core belief. It's, you know, often in the past, the whole process of going through a student support team was seen as like a hoop to jump through to get to special education. So we've started having more and more conversations about, okay, what is this paper going to give you that's different, or going to give this student that's different than what we could do without it? And really trying to think about creative ways to solve some of these challenges. And I'm going to give an example when I get to the assessment slide about something that we just did 2 weeks ago to change something up. And you know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing you've always done and expecting different results. Right. So we're trying to be really creative about, okay, how do we use the staffing that we have in different ways?
But I think a lot of it also is about empowering general education
Absolutely.
and other teachers to understand what it truly means to do a tier 1, a tier 2, a tier 3 intervention.
And that they're doing so much of it already.
Well, that's what I was going to say. So I had an elementary school teacher who asked if I would come and observe. She's like, I don't know what I'm doing. She's like, you asked a question and I don't know. Like you said, what are my tier 1 interventions tonight? I really don't know. And I was like, okay. So I went and I did an observation, and she's like, so what should I do? I'm like, you've done all of, like, this, and this are tier 1. This is tier 2. The way that you just pulled that small group, well, these ones were doing that, so you could focus on honing on this skill because this group of kids needed it, and those ones were sufficient on their own or independent, or another group had gone and moved on to an enrichment activity while these ones were working. Like, you're doing it already. You just need to have to be able to recognize within your own self and your own practice that you are doing a great job. And we're not trying to make you add new interventions. We just want you to recognize what you've already done and document it so that we can say what we need to do beyond that or less. All right, so moving on to Jen.
Okay, so this is the real meat of that IMTSS plan that I share with you. It's, we're looking at our instruction, our intervention, the assessments that we have, using that data-based decision-making process, and then looking at our district infrastructure. Casey did an awesome job with the triangle, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the triangle. There's a lot of words in the screen. Karen would be very upset with me. But I think the most important thing for us to realize is that if our numbers are not where we want them to be, we need to look at our core instruction, and we're spending a lot of time doing that right now. This is what assessment looks like. So all of our students, we start with a universal screener that we give to every single student. In K-8, that is STAR Reading and STAR Math. We do not have a universal screener for academics at the high school at this point, but we are researching and trying to figure out what would be the next best step for us. That also goes into looking at a universal screener for SEL, which we mentioned the grant funding will help us get to.
Jen, can I ask you a question?
Yes, please.
That universal screener that we're looking at, is that supposed to replace the opt-in survey that we do now? Is that what am I thinking about that right?
So Panorama is not necessarily a screener that would identify students that are maybe having social emotional challenges. Really, it's a self-reporting tool where students are answering the questions, but it's not normed. So they're only rated against themselves. So if you had a student
so
that...
it is not something that's replacing that?
No, it wouldn't necessarily. No.
That was just all
so we're exploring other options there. And then as you get to tier 2, we do more specific assessments to really see where those challenges are. The database decision making, which students are at risk and do they require intervention? What specific skills require intervention? This is a great example. We just did these curriculum-based measures with our kindergarten and first grade students. We looked specifically at number and letter recognition. We looked at letter sound identification. And then we also looked at comparing numbers. So is 4 bigger than 3? And what we found, and it's actually really interesting because when you have a conversation with the kindergarten teachers, they're saying the majority of the students that are coming to them in kindergarten this year either A, did not have a preschool experience, or B, had a preschool experience that was very play-based. So they really did not have a lot of exposure to even recognizing what their name looks like written down. So we found that a huge number of our kindergarten students don't know their letters and they don't know their numbers. And then when you get to first grade, we have a large portion of our first grade students that don't know their letter sounds. So what we did is all the interventionists, we all got together, we sat down, we looked at the data, and we said, okay, this is a problem. And we know that our kindergarten students and our first grade students are going to have a challenge building on any of those skills if they don't know their letters, they don't know their numbers, they don't know their letter sounds. So we stopped all of the interventions that were taking place within JCS and LGN, and we said, okay, this is what we're going to do. Kindergarten, we're going to focus on letters, and first grade, we're going to focus on numbers right now, and we're going to do this really quick 4-week intervention cycle. 5 days a week, the interventionists are pushing into the kindergarten and first grade classrooms. It's a 10 to 15 minute intervention. So they're playing some quick games. They're working on recognition of and identification of those letters and numbers, or those letter sounds. And they're seeing those students every single day, 5 days a week, for about 4 or 5 weeks. And we had to tell the other grade levels, we just finished a cycle with you. We will come back. But right now, we need to stop and help our kindergarten and our first grade teachers with this challenge. So it's something that we typically don't service kindergarten students with our Title I funds, so this is new. And we're really excited that we're about a week in with the math interventions. And the math interventions are always saying, like, it's been so great to see these kids day after day. They're not missing class time because they're just being pulled to a table to math. So that's just a relative example of the database decision-making that we're doing. And then the infrastructure. I've talked a little bit about how we're trying to bring everything together here. Every building has their own building-based IMTSS team. The principal or assistant principal are both on it. Classroom teachers, curriculum leaders, special educators, counselors, and then some of our specialized staff. From those building-based teams, they all have a representative either on the PBIS, the SEL committee, the data subcommittee, or the district team. So that is really helping us to streamline communication, and we're hopeful that as we continue to meet and work together, it will help us to really be specific about our goals across the district and not have things happening in isolation from building to building. So we have a continued partnership with the University of Missouri, and they are providing Sustain PD for us, which January 27th, March 17th, May 19th, and then they're actually coming out for 3 full days in February to do observations, meet with our teams, talk about specific challenges. I talked with the district subcommittees, and then we really want to make sure that we are increasing our communication with our families about those small intervention groups. And this is something that we're doing to support your child. We don't want parents to panic if their kids are being pulled for a quick intervention. This is something that we're doing to help get them caught up, and then we'll move on and they'll be more successful for it. So, and just the continuous data collection and review. Are you going fast?
What's that?
Are you going fast?
I'm going fast. I'll try to go really fast. So PBIS. So PBIS is something that the district has been doing for a while. I think one of my slides is 2016 when they started here. So how does PBIS tie into this whole initiative? Well, PBIS stands for Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports, and really it's a framework. So this isn't something we do to a child per se, right? It's not that kind of intervention. It's the structures in which we build our behavioral interventions, how we teach expectations. You think about it's kind of like the policies and procedures, right? How do you move about the building? How do you interact with your peers? Each building, and it's really staff-driven in terms of how do we set up those structures. It takes about 3 to 5 years without the interruption of a pandemic to get the whole process. And it's driven from the ground up. So this isn't something the administrators come down, even at the building level, and say, here you go, guys, this is what you're going to do. There's a team, work with the teachers, there's coaches that are involved, and they develop this framework. They teach the expectations. They do very specific lessons around that. And then what we do is we reinforce using that common language. So when a child is doing the appropriate behavior or interacting the appropriate way, then they get recognition of that. So it's that kind of system that's put into place. The other piece of it gives you lots of data based off behavioral referrals. So if somebody's not meeting the expectations, we can track that. We also track how many times are students meeting the expectations. Then what you're able to do is sort of break that down and look at your structures within your individual school and say, well, where are we having some concerns? What's not working? We get a lot of referrals at dismissal time. As staff, not again doing it to the students, but as a staff, how do we reorganize dismissal time? What's that going to look like? And are we teaching the kids what we actually want them to do so that they know this is what I'm supposed to be doing? It's very evidence-based. We work with the May Institute and also the University of Connecticut. They're the sort of the leaders in this. And there's tons of research on this out there. At the older grades, we really engage the students to see what their perceptions of how are things going, what kinds of things do we need to focus on, how should we move about the building, what could we do better at dismissal time, those kinds of things we work with. I'm trying to do this quickly because I know we've gone through a lot of things. And because we take data, there's kind of a screening process here. Well, what we can break it down to look at grade level, we can break it down to look at time of day, all of those factors, so you can say, okay, what's going well and what's not. Again, triangle. I know you guys are sick of the triangle, believe me. I get it. But really what we're talking about
See, it all goes together.
about 80% of what we're going to do is we're going to try to target, right? So 80% of the students, it's prevention. It's setting up the system so kids know what they're supposed to be doing. We just talked about, kids coming out of the pandemic. They don't have those school readiness skills. You don't have some of those behavioral skills. If you don't understand the expectations, then you're not able to access the curriculum as well. So these are intervention systems, recognition, changing of how we do things within the structure of the school that impacts about 80% of the kids. That's tier 1. Tier 2 interventions, and that's what all our schools are doing at some level right now. Tier 2, very quickly, is there's a check-in and check-out system that is used to help support kids that are maybe struggling with some of these skills. That is a system that we're starting to implement at this point in some of our elementary schools. Oops, sorry. Oh boy. Okay, there we go. So what are the outcomes? Why do we use PBIS? We touched a lot on a lot of this with the MTSS piece, but the research shows, one, it improves student outcomes. If you have those skills, right, if you're able to access the curriculum, you're going to have better academic skills. You're going to be able to regulate your emotions better. You're going to be able to interact with your peers better. And as you get to the upper grades, you're going to develop, that dreaded soft skills. How to manage yourself, how to be responsible, how to organize your time. It definitely has a huge impact. The research is very clear that folks that use PBIS with fidelity have less suspensions, office referrals, because again, the focus is not just on the individual child, but on the system as a whole, and then how do we reinforce the kids that are doing the right thing? And honestly, they kind of bring along their peers, right? If the culture and the climate of the school is such that things are, this is what is expected. This is how we all act in a school, and we're going to get reinforced for that. It's going to bring those kids along. And there's also, in terms of teacher outcomes, teachers who are working in these school systems, usually we keep, the retention is better, the climate is better. The focus is on the positive, not the negative. Is what kids are doing well, and how do we reinforce that versus, oh, these kids, right? So teachers feel better about what they're doing. Quickly, as I said, it started in 2016, I believe it was, even before my time, and it's a process. So the elementary schools started the year after that. They've kind of continued, and we're now moving into tier 2 interventions that check in and check out. And then the middle school started as well. Unfortunately for the middle school, they were really rolling with this, really getting their teams together, and literally the year of the pandemic, it just put that all on hold. And then the high school started kind of last year with the initial rolling out and discussion, and it takes a lot of structures that PBIS takes you through as a team to build your intervention systems. And so they've been doing that. There's not a lot of high schools out there that do this, but it has a big impact on those that do. So it's not as easy for them to kind of reach out and say, okay, what are other schools doing out there? They have to really kind of do it on their own, and it's much more important to engage the students at that level. So they're in the process of doing that now. Again, just at the, this is kind of backwards, you should probably do it the other way. But the most important thing is the school-wide team. So there's a leadership team. They meet, they talk about the structures, they talk about the interventions they're going to put in place, the reinforcers. They develop the lessons, and they engage the entire school community. And then there are specific coaches who work with us at the district level and with the May Institute to sort of make sure that we're implementing it right and that we're doing it with fidelity. There's a series of measures that they conduct throughout the year. And then we have a PBIS leadership team. Carrie Sumner has been just incredible in organizing this and keeping us on schedule. And they sort of support what they need. What kinds of things do you need? Making sure people are on target. So that's that. I'm going really fast here. So when you look at the kind of the components, one, it's kind of like, what's this common approach? Like, what are we expecting? So you'll hear like respect, responsibility, and safety. You know, those are kinds of the core
areas that we're looking at. And then in each of the areas of the school, what's that look like? What's that sound like in the classroom? What's it look like and sound like at dismissal, in the cafeteria, in the hallways? We clearly define the behaviors. I think this is really important. You know, kids naturally know, well, what am I supposed to do in this situation? How do I go down a hallway? How do I interact? What if I need help? Those things are clearly defined in behavioral terms, and then they're taught, just like any other skill. And then we have a continuum of ways of reinforcing students. I know at the Yale School, people have probably heard about the book vending machine. That's one thing, you know, they earn coins, I think it is, and then when they get so many coins, they can go get that. But it's beyond that. It's the everyday reinforcement and encouragement of the appropriate behaviors, and not to focus on what they didn't do right, but what you do right. Then there's also a continuum of consequences, right? When you don't meet the expectation. And then, as I said, there's a pretty intensive behavior system data system that we use that can really help us pinpoint where maybe we need to target change some of our interventions. How do we change the structures? What do we do differently as adults? Not necessarily always about the kids, but what do we need to do to change that area to make sure that the kids are behaving and interacting in a way that's appropriate. This is just an example of with the LG, so they have respectful, responsible, and safe. This is what it sounds like and looks like in the classroom, hallway, and bathroom. And they practice those skills. The middle school just has sort of they've done like a redo this year. This is what they're looking for in their classroom. They've had a lot of issues with voice level. That was one of the things that both the staff and the students identified. So they came up with this little way of teaching those skills. And now everybody's using the same language. Teacher A, teacher B, teacher C are saying, hey, is that a 5 or a 2? Is this a situation where we should be yelling? I don't think it's an emergency. Remember, we're at a 2 level. People are using the same language. And then, as I said, we use the Swiss information system. This is phenomenal. I can go in and I said, you know what, I'm hearing a lot of concerns at the middle school. I can look and see what time of the day, when is the worst time of the day. Okay, what do we need to get the group together and figure out why that at 2 o'clock in the afternoon we're having more issues. You can really break it down and take a look at it. So, trying to do it quickly for you guys. There you go. Happy to talk about it anytime.
So we'll wrap up with something that we've been looking at called benefits-based accountability. So let's go back to the MCAS discussion that we had a few weeks ago. I know I wasn't there for it, but a lot of discussion about the issue of compliance and improving MCAS scores. This discussion aligns with all of that, but it takes it to another level, which is how do we self-assess ourselves and what are the benefits that we have as a school district going forward. So we've been working since last year with John Tanner from a company called Brave Ed. He's a researcher on the idea of accountability and looking at institutions and organizations. And the idea behind this is to take a look at the 7 pillars of accountability and the 31 benefits that go with those pillars and self-report in the following way. Are we changing or building capacity? Are we staying the course? Or are we trying to be different? Those are the 3 questions that you have to answer for each of the 7 pillars: student learning, student readiness, engage well-rounded students, well-being, effective adults, community connections, and effective systems. All of what you've heard from these folks and the work that they're doing all fit into this discussion. And so the idea is, when you're looking at student learning, you're learning at, are the student getting the basics? Is there deep content? Is it strength focused? Is it aligned to need? Is the environment, you can do it at any place at any time. All of this fits into the language that you've heard earlier today. And I won't go specifically to each of those because you guys have had this and you can ask away. But student readiness. Are our students in this school being prepared for the future? Not only the high school, but the middle school, the Yale, and so on and so forth. Are we learning to think ahead as an institution? Are we owning the work? Are we getting our students to own the work? Do they really understand what we're trying to do? So that when you walk into a classroom, can I go, and by the way, we've done 45 learning walks in the last 2 days, okay? And one on student engagement and in 2 different schools. And you know, one of the things that we looked for was, are the students, do they know what they're supposed to be doing? Can I go up to a student and say, what are you doing? And is that aligned to what the objective of the actual lesson is, right? Under engaged and well-rounded students, what's the work that we're asking students to do? Is it meaningful work, or is it just, here's another worksheet? Okay? Is it allowing for creativity? Right? The human mind is the most creative thing in the entire world, right? Do students have a voice? Are we teaching from a perspective? What are we really trying to get students to do? When I was an administrator early on, MCAS packets in every MCAS math classroom and every ELA classroom. I know Vinny worked in the inner city, he knows this. Every math class had a packet. It was a teach to the test packet, right? And if the results the following year weren't good, all of those kids would go into a remedial math class, and guess what they would get? A packet. In many cases, the same packet. Well-being. Do we have safe learning spaces for our students? You know, we've been having a lot of discussions about our furniture, believe it or not. Is it conducive for wanting students to work in groups? If you look at our middle school furniture in our general classrooms, they're not conducive for groupings because there are all these individual seats that if you wanted to work on something, you can't come together with it. Do we have the well-being of students, the friendships and the connections? Can we see it? I saw a great exercise a few weeks ago at a workshop that I was at on school safety. And the exercise was teachers get in a room and they have a roster of all their kids, right? And all the different, and you put a star next to a kid or a check next to a kid that you feel you have a connection with. And what you come out with is you see examples of how even the adults know that there's certain kids in the building that they're not making a connection with. And you look at student attendance, and you look at student discipline, and you look at issues, and what you see is this continuum of, hey, what's the goal for next term? I've got to get to know Joey. Somebody on this team has got to learn Joey and how to work with Joey, so that he's feeling supportive within the building. Effective adults. I really believe that we have a lot of, if not, I think every adult that's in this district really cares about kids. I really do. I think we have effective teachers in our district. But we really need to look at that at the ground level of our schools. Students need ahead of adults need. Okay, really important one. Great training and support. Karen talked about this earlier. So again, I'm trying to make a connection so that the benefits system works with what we're trying to do. Community connections. This is an area that I believe we, the five of you and me, have to do a better job of. And I'm saying that aloud without having the conversation with you. We need to get into our community and show them how good we are and how much better we could if A, B, and C lined up. Engaging our students as citizens. I mean, the two young girls who came up today, I mean, I didn't even have to come up. They just took over the show. I mean, it was amazing. They walked into my office and did exactly the same thing. Mr. Gagan brought them down because he told me about it. I said, hey, bring them down. You know, I got my pride pencils I like to give out to the kids. And then next thing you know, the conversation was like I was, you know, it just went on forever. They were just excited and wonderful kids, and I think we saw that today. Number two, the one that is the hardest at times, parents as partners, right? We have just come, or maybe still are, with a lot of conflict in the world, right? Parents' rights and teachers and all that stuff. We need to have the conversations again. We can agree to disagree on certain things, but the fact of the matter is the goal is the same. To work with the children of Norton and get them to really think about what they want to be when they grow up. And then effective systems. Hire the right people. Make sure the stakeholders are the students, the parents or guardians, right? The staff, the employees, and then the community, the people whose kids are no longer here or never came here, and get them to understand what we're trying to really do as a school system. It's easy to ask for money. It's harder to show the effectiveness of that, right? We say that all the time because we always say, if we had another $100,000, we could do X, right? And that's part of our system. The benefits-based system is a 3 to 4 year process. We're in the second year of just learning about it. The principals have actually just been assigned Where do you think you are in those 3 questions of the 31 benefits? Do you really want to make some change, or do you think that what we're doing is okay, and we just should continue to tweak it? For us, and probably the most important thing is, I'm not going to ask us to not be compliant. I think all of you, Nick, maybe not as much because you're newer, but as a committee, everybody knows I am not a fan of just checking the box compliance from the state. And I've said that a million times. But we have to do it. We know we have to do it. So we have to improve MCAS scores, although it's only 1 test, right? It's going to be one of the things we're going to be doing is we're going to be trying to really show the community. This was our 3rd grade assessment. Where's Johnny in 4th grade? Where's Johnny in 5th grade? Now, we still have to do the 3rd to 3rd, even though it's 2 different groups of kids, but where's that cohort of kids? Because what we find in Norton is, when they get to 10th grade, our scores are 90% or above, typically, that they're meeting or exceeding, and we also know that the number of kids that are continuing their education and or going to the workforce. So, when we look at all of this, it's all about making the connections. And I'll end with this and then take any questions, because I know 2 things. Number 1, you're going to get this entire system that you heard tonight in chunks throughout the year. We're going to be reporting back what's working, what's not, so that you folks can, when you're asked a question about X, Y, and Z, you can say, well, no, we're actually working on this stuff. And I'll end with this. Our mission has not changed: to promote individual talents and maximize each student's potential. Our core values haven't changed: respect, collaboration, high expectations, responsibility, equity, and pride. And our vision has not changed. In active partnership with families and the community, we will foster personal development, intellectual growth, and prepare each student to contribute and succeed as productive and responsible global citizens, and I would actually argue citizens of the community of Norton. So I know it's been a long night of celebrating, and then the last over an hour of this stuff, but we thought it was really important to put it not only to you what we're trying to do here, but also the community, since we're being taped tonight, our staff that's been involved with this and gave feedback on this, the community that did the same thing, and we ask you that you support the strategic plan going forward. Thank you.
That was a lot to digest.
You should be in the office with us on a day-to-day basis.
That's what I was thinking, Jen.
So, speaking as a parent first, there's no other district I put my kids in. I don't make it a point to interact with a lot of other, school committees or anything like that. So I don't see what they're doing, but I do have a couple of friends that are in other districts, and, I'll have a conversation, about some of this stuff, and they're flabbergasted that we're doing this stuff. So as a parent, I couldn't be prouder of the work that goes into something like this. I read through this a couple of times. There's a lot of lofty goals here. And that says a lot about our leadership, about our administrators, that, coming out of, this pandemic, kids are hurting, teachers are hurting, administrators are hurting, but collectively we're putting together plans to get us back to the golden years. So I commend you on this plan personally, and I look forward to seeing where we are, from now till 2026. Anything else? Anybody else?
I got a few points. I think first and foremost, looking back at the history of strategic plans in Norton, Vision 2015, 2018, and Vision 2022, which was made in 2018, had a community and a committee geared towards a strategic plan. Did that happen? Was there a committee that did this?
We took the plan from 2022 and we added to it. That's what we did.
Okay. So, this is probably being nitpicky, but our vision is an active partnership with families in the community, yet our strategic plan for the next 4 years didn't include parents, didn't include other community members, didn't include the school committee member. I don't know if the teachers were involved. So we have to me, that is a huge piece of this that I have the biggest issue with, and it translates and trickles through a lot of different pieces of this in terms of a strategic plan and moving forward. I think to Dr. Bayetta's point, obviously with COVID, we caught a hiccup in Vision 2022 that obviously no one saw coming, nor we ever dealt with in our lives. I think hopefully won't. I think back to that is Vision 2022, Goal 1 and Goal 2 are pretty much the exact same of what we have in now Vision 2026, which is understandable, because obviously we didn't meet goals and so on and so forth. I think another big issue that I have within this is there's a lot of words on a paper. There's so many, I was joking around with Dinesh, there's so many acronyms. As a parent and as a school committee member, I feel like I got a little bit way more information tonight, but I do not feel whatsoever comfortable voting this through without really having another discussion on this, because I do think there's a lot of targets, there's a lot of strategies that seem great on paper, but how do we know that in 2024, 2025, and 2026 ultimately, that these are being met, and how are these being, how are we making that ongoing process that, hey, creating work documents, okay, what does those look like, and how do we know from our side of things, to make sure it's trickling down, if you will, keeping everyone on the same page, I guess, if you will. Those are kind of some of my overall. I think the entire process of the systems in place, and it does, and after seeing this, it definitely does make sense a little bit more in terms of like how it all connects. At first, I was like, what? I was reading it, over the last, few days here. I'm going, what is going on? I don't even know, where to begin here. And again, that is a concern of mine because, fostering back into that parent, back into that community aspect of it, how are we getting that information out to our parents, And again, I commend Dr. Bayetta because he did send out, hey, here's Vision 2026. Do you have any opinions on it? I feel like we did, quite frankly, kind of the bare minimum on that end of things. I think this could have been a little bit better. I think we would have a little bit better of a buy-in per se from community, from parents if they were involved throughout the process. And like I said, going back to those other strategic plans, there was parents on it, there was community members on it. That I feel like, not that it happened behind closed doors and in the dark, but I kind of feel like this got thrown onto us. And I'm assuming there's other parents in the district who either have seen this, glazed over it quickly, and was like, what is going on? Because quite frankly, that's kind of how I looked at it. And then, like I said, ultimately too, I would love to know what our teachers and where they're at. And I'm not asking anyone to speak for them or anything, but I would love to know kind of where our teachers are at in terms of, do they feel like they were heard? Because that might be another aspect of this too. So that's kind of my, I guess, 2 cents in terms of kind of what we're looking at. I think overall the idea of, educating all students and finding a way to connect at post-pandemic, we all see it, and trying to, put stuff on paper that we have our teachers and our admin and our students and the community bought into is a great idea. I do have some concerns about creativity. I feel like with a certain degree of these things, we're all at the same sound level, we're all doing this, we're all doing that. I feel like we might be handcuffing our teachers a little bit from creativity in the classroom. And again, that's outsider looking in. Maybe our teachers feel completely different. But again, I think I've kind of talked long enough, but there's just a lot of information here, there's a lot of things going on. And when I'm looking at planning for the next 4 years of what Norton schools look like, it's going to outlast all 5 of us in terms of, unless we get reelected. But everyone's going to be up at a certain level that it might not be us anymore that this is going to affect, and so on, and, for parents and admin as well. So I think we need a little bit more of a fine-tooth comb with something as long as these lines. And I get it, strategic planning in general, there's always going to be hiccups. You can put down 9,000 things on a piece of paper, you can plan through 9,000 things in your own life, and something's going to happen and screw it up. But again, I do think we need to be a little bit cognizant of the fact of making sure the vision of Norton schools going forward has a very clear, defined picture of what we're all looking for. That's it.
Thanks, Nick.
Joe, did you send out this, you sent out the information, right, on this to
Yep.
families?
Yep.
Did you get any feedback from any parents?
I think we got 6. We had 6 total that came back. One was an attack on equity, and the other ones were fine arts and wanted to know more about fine arts programming. I can share that with you if you'd like. I just have to scratch the names off of it.
I was just wondering, based on how many students we have in our school system, how many parents actually responded?
That's what I just told you.
Yeah.
And we gave it to the staff, and
worth
had staff responses multiple times. So I don't know if I can agree with Nick's comment about that, it was done in a vacuum. I think that the auspices of the idea that we took is exactly what you said, from 1 and 2 haven't changed much, because we were going pretty well, and then the pandemic hit, and it was just, we went into a whole different direction. We didn't even look at a strategic plan. I don't think there's anything within this plan that's per se controversial, I guess the word is what I would say. I do think that, the plan has been out for a number of weeks for comments from folks, and the participation in the first 3 strategic plans that I was involved here was somewhat limited as well, in terms of input and so on. It was very much driven by administration and then putting it out. But I mean, whatever the committee wants to do is fine. My only one pushback would be, we just spent a lot of time on it. It's already gone out to the committee. It would have been, to Nick's point, probably more appropriate to have that conversation before presenting it tonight. That would have been my one carrot, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think from my standpoint, I kind of kicked myself for not bringing it up earlier, but obviously we have an agenda, we kind of stick to it. I didn't want to open the can of worms. I wasn't assuming we were going to kind of have a presentation and then all of a sudden be like, here we go, we're voting on this and sending it forward.
You're more than welcome to sit on it until whatever meeting you decide to vote on it. We won't start the implementation of it in terms of if we're moving on with IMTSS and PBIS and accountability, then let's just take a holiday and stop doing it all right now, and then just start it when, in fact, the committee decides to vote for it, whenever that's going to be. Just stop the work completely. I don't think that's a good idea.
No, but I mean, like, our goal 1 and goal 2 was already in our vision.
Right.
So I don't think we need to stop anything. I don't think it's like hey, hit the brakes on this thing and, let's completely change what we're doing. I think we need to just make sure we know, again, this is me speaking only, make sure we know exactly what we're looking at when we're trying to project out 4 years of what Norton schools look like.
So I think I feel a little bit different, and I might feel different because I've been doing this a little bit longer.
That also could be very true.
Yeah, I've sat in, Joe, I think I was on one of these committees, and you see the people who participate and the majority who choose not to, right? There's many opportunities for people to participate and they choose not to. So the way that I look at this, I listened to this presentation tonight and I'm excited to be in Norton. I feel more like Dan, right? That we have administrators who not only took the time to put something like this in place, but just listening to every single one of them, not just a couple of them, every single one of them speak positively, enthusiastic, collaborating with each other. I sit here and think, man, how lucky am I? I was actually thinking, I wish my kids were younger to have a do-over, honest to God. That's what I was sitting here thinking. And I'm thinking, how lucky am I that we have this team that has put this together for us to move our kids forward, especially out of what we just came out of. Without me, who I do not have an education background, I wouldn't know half the stuff that these guys know. So just being through the process, sitting in these committee meetings, and hearing things, I feel very differently. I feel very lucky to be in Norton. Again, I wish my kids were younger so that I could see this through them.
Yeah, and I don't want to make it, to your point, is I'm not trying to make this like an attack or I feel very fortunate that we got all of this because this doesn't happen often, you know? And I think, you know, the work that is put into it is obviously a lot, you know? To me, it's just, there's just a piece of it that just makes me hang up in terms of, it just something doesn't feel like we got everything in here that we need.
You know, if I could sort of piggyback, I think part of it is probably that we have sort of sat on this group for a long time and have been really privy to some great meetings and conversations and been able to make different observations. You know, I was really fortunate 2 weeks ago to be in Dr. Kiefer's class to work with some of his art students, and what an experience to be able to actually, you know, sort of see some of these things in action, right? Really sort of set up kind of an experience for the students that demonstrated, I think, a lot of what we were discussing tonight and how creative I think it was for Dr. Kiefer to reach out to the community and to say, you know, who could come and to just have these conversations with students about their work and what they created. And so I think, you know, we do have that luxury to see it a little bit differently. I also want to sort of share that on Tuesday, thank you, Dr. Bayetta, you had coffee hour. I went as a parent, not as a school committee member, and I'm happy to say that I had the opportunity to sit with Dr. Bayetta and 2 other parents out of our entire district, 2 parents. One being me, well, there were 3 of us. One was me as a parent, and then 2 other parents. So, you know, there are these really lovely opportunities, I think, and I don't know what happens in other districts, but as a parent, I probably didn't need to be there because I probably would have known what you were going to share. But I do like to participate and be there for, you know, to get a better sense of what is kind of happening district-wide and how are we working together as a community. So I'm not sure that the invitations that go out to families are always sort of seen or responded to. It would have been great. We had a lovely conversation. We sort of got a little bit of this, I think, before you presented. We had the opportunity to meet another parent who had, you know, her own questions, really sort of opens your mind and gets you to think, I think, through a different lens. So these things happen, and I think we've been privy to them, perhaps, because we sit here, we've been doing it for a long time, but I think there is this level of creativity in Norton that's unmatchable. I think that we just have administrators, and I think it feels that our kind of individual school administrators are doing lovely jobs within their own buildings, but they're really working collaboratively. Like, all of a sudden, we're seeing sort of our administrators all working collaboratively, our elementary administrators, our high school and middle school. It's really impressive, and I think, Sherry, you know, our children are around the same age. I do wish that we were perhaps sort of experiencing it again, to kind of see all of this in action. I mean, you know, and I think part 2, Dinesh, you and I had the lovely opportunity to sit, well, it was lovely most of the time, to sit on sort of our opportunity to really do some of the contract negotiations, but to really see the passion of our staff, to kind of know exactly how they wanted to teach students. And I think that that's, you know, maybe what other people kind of in our community don't see, but it's, I think, it's sort of represented in this document, all of the work that we're doing. And then I will sort of just share one more thing. We had our wellness committee meeting today, and really the fact that we want to, in Norton, consider social emotional learning as part of wellness. It is not a requirement within sort of the document. It doesn't have to be in kind of our wellness kind of ideas, but I think that that just speaks again to sort of who we are as a community. We want our children to be successful, and that doesn't mean that they just have to get sort of, you know, these high academic grades. It means that we want them to be part of a larger community. And I think that that's all that's happening. And I think that that, for me, is what I saw in this document.
so.
I think, so a couple different things. I think the first one is that anytime you create a strategic plan, there's three things that can happen. The plan can be created by all the different folks, and it gets shelved, creates a lot of great, dust, and nothing happens. I think what we want to do here, and why I think it's been such a big plan, aggressive plan, is we want to really engage the work with the committee and the community in terms of the very question we had early on about special education. Do we actually see the statistics and the numbers differently? Or can we speak with anecdotal evidence and information to the committee and the community about how IMTSS is in fact working? The other thing we can do here is put it off. We can send this out as a, quote, finalized version draft and get further input from whomever would like to within the community provide more input to the school committee as it pertains to what's it missing, not missing, what should it have, what it shouldn't have. It's not specific enough, it's too specific, whatever the wishes of the committee are. I think that the broader aspect of this is we're not trying administratively to do anything to our students, our staff, or our parents. What we're trying to do is we're coming out of a pandemic where we weren't able to even come close to finishing or implementing, I should say, our Vision 2022. So we've taken aspects of that and just tweaked it by saying one of the ways for us to be successful is to implement IMTSS and PBIS and having a reading goal for the first. This district has never had a reading goal. We've never had a reading goal. Prior to me, during me, let me rephrase, during me, prior to me, until now. And we're putting a very aggressive reading goal on the table. And we are because of wanting to have a goal for ourselves as the adults and the experts in the classroom and administratively, and for our families to know, hey, we're not announcing, we want 60% of our kids to be at grade level. Boy, that would be great. I mean, I could easily take an MCAS result of 42% of the kids at meeting or exceeding and say, hey, we're gonna make it 50% next year. That's not good enough, as far as I'm concerned, on that one assessment. It's just not. If you take a look at, if you're at 42 and you want to be at 90, just using that one test, which I don't think is the way we should conclude this. We should have multiple assessments that we use. But if you took the old way of doing business, you would say, you're at 42, you need to be at 90. 90 minus 42 is 48. 48 divided by 4 means every single year for the next 4 years, we need to increase by 12 points. 42 to 52 to 68 to all the way up. And now, hey, now we're at 90. Those are the old ways of doing that type of stuff. That's not what we're trying to do here. What we are trying to do here is take a look at a cohort of students over the next 4 years. The kids that are in 4th grade right now, based on their 3rd grade, but also start with the new 3rd grade, make those comparisons. Are the interventions work, even though they're 2 different groups of kids, then follow that group again, and just continuously do that for the next 4 years. That's the reason behind that goal. There's a real opportunity for us to do some things, and there's also the difficult discussions around where the finances are coming from in the future. So that's the one too, right? Because the cliff is coming, and what will happen is you'll potentially be at 30 kids in the classroom again, your interventions are all gone, and so on and so forth, and so on and so forth. And then the next thing you know, I have to come back here and say, hey guys, we need to re-look at our vision. Our strategic plan needs to be reconsidered, because I can't talk to you about X positions because we no longer have those positions. So.
Joe, can I just, one more thing I just want to point out. One thing about Norton for sure is we are a group of extremely passionate people, right? And so for this document to have gone out to all the parents, when we are perceived as doing something wrong, people show up, right? They're here. They don't just sit back and not, I mean, they are here in our face telling us exactly what they think. I just want to point out all administrators, Norton Teachers Association or president of the union, and Peter. right? I think that's telling. Peter, you're hiding behind the camera. But I just want to point out, I think that is telling. I think that if there was more concern out there about this plan, we would certainly have heard it by now. So just with that said, I'm more than comfortable voting tonight on this. That's just my opinion.
So, let me preface this by saying that I think it's a great plan. If we voted on it tonight, I would vote yes. That being said, it's a lot of information. The presentation, we're sneaking up on 2 hours now between presentation and discussion of it. So if we decide to keep the conversation going with the idea that this is kind of where we're going, I'm okay with that. I think I take a little bit of a different view on what we want to do with respect to inclusion in this. And I look at this vision as this is how we want to conduct the enhancement of these students in the school. This is not a, at home, on the street, et cetera. So I'm not sure that I want to have a ton of input from parents that might supersede input from people who do this for a living, essentially. So I'm not sure, Nick, if that's what you're saying, or if you're saying you just want more like parent buy-in ahead of moving it forward. Because if it's the former, I'm not so sure that that's the way to go with it. If it's the latter, I get that, and that makes some sense. You know what I'm saying?
Sort of.
So the SWIS, whatever the SWIS was, it's one of the 700 acronyms I can remember.
The triangle.
Well, the triangle, the Swiss triangle, okay? If Vinny says, hey, the Swiss triangle is this and it's the way to go, and Mary Smith in the street says, well, I don't think that is the Swiss, it's something else, and I say, well, Mary, what do you do for a living? And she says, I'm an accountant. Well, okay. I'm not sure I want Mary's input on the Swiss triangle, because Mary doesn't really know the Swiss triangle. So I'm trying to make sure that we're not allowing information to come into this that is not isn't expert information, if you would. Like I don't want to open it up too much for addition.
All right, I mean, yes, I completely understand that, but like, let's just.
And that's what I'm asking. Is that what you're saying? Or?
Sort of, yes, but like, there's a lot of experts in a lot of educational fields.
Everyone's an expert, right?
But no, I mean, you can have superintendents who believe wholeheartedly in some sort of curriculum, and 3 districts over, the other person says that's the worst way to do it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we truly have full experts who have a one-all, know exactly what's going on. And this isn't, hey, you have a broken bone, we're going to solve the broken bone.
Right.
There's one way to, maybe not one way to do it, but there's always multiple ways, and that's where education makes it very, very difficult. Aspects of this have been, even like SEL. I'm not saying I'm in support or not in support, but SEL is completely shut down in Florida. There's a lot of smart people down there. There's a lot of superintendents who have gone on to Harvard and everything else, and Florida has completely shut it out of their curriculum. So I'm not saying we're taking away from our admin, because that is our experts in the town of Norton, So when we look at it from that standpoint, what we truly need to do is back our administration. And how do we get the backing? We need the parents' input to make sure that backing. If we're doing it as, hey, admin put together this strategic goal, and again, I sort of do agree with Sherry. We know how the town works. People are only going to come when they feel like they absolutely have to come, and or they're pissed off. But I feel like there's an aspect of this that we skipped over, that community and the parent involvement of it.
So that sounds more like buy-in to me, though. Like you're really saying.
I want buy-in. That's what you correct. Right, correct. Okay. And again, maybe we may have buy-in. And again, I guess the age-old term that if you say nothing, we assume you buy in.
Yeah.
But I think
sometimes the buy-in is nobody says it.
Correct.
But I think to your point of the Florida situation in SEL, right? As a point, Massachusetts has a totally different perspective.
Absolutely.
Since 2010, SEL, because of the anti-bullying law, has been integrated into every single piece of curriculum: math, science, social studies, English. It's in the, quote, best practices. Florida's gone in a different direction. Massachusetts
Joe, let me
has
interrupt
stated.
you and just say, listen, we're never going to find the right answer. It's never going to happen, right? Because this is for till 2026. I guarantee you in 2026, the vision that the next school committee is voting on is going to be something completely different. I mean, it just is what it is. Like, and that's not to. I'm not diminishing this one. I actually think it makes a lot of sense. I like it. I'm just saying that the ideas constantly are changing. It's what we see in education. It's what we see in the world, right?
Well, again,
so
and like how many in this, again, another aspect of this is how many different curriculums and acronyms have we gone through within education in the last 30 years? That was the hot button issue of the time, and then 5 years later, they're like, this doesn't work, toss that out.
It's a conversation we've had on the school thing multiple times over the years. It's you know, we do something until we say that, you know, this doesn't work anymore, this is the right way to do it, et cetera, et cetera. So one thing about this, and, you know, there was, Joe, you mentioned something before about changing it, there was inclusions, I can't remember what you were saying exactly, but I kind of look at this like a living document, and so it's moving forward, it's a framework, it's not a prison. So we say, okay, here's kind of idealistically how we would want to run the district with respect to SEL, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's how we'll proceed. That's the path we're going to take. Now, at some point on that path, are we going to expand out a little bit? Are we going to contract down a little bit? Or are we going to take a left? Yeah, we absolutely could. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay if this isn't absolutely perfect. And if at some point down the line we look and say, hey, you know what? This isn't working. I would much rather have us say, this isn't working and we're going to change it, than to sit here and say, well, we don't know what's going to work, so we're not going to do anything. Like, I don't want to do that. Like, I can tell you right now, none of us knows the right answer. No one will ever know the right answer. The right answer is constantly changing. So, again, I'm okay continuing the conversation if we want to kind of digest this and think about it and come back with questions. And this is kind of the pathway. I'm not sure I'm looking to like have people have input into it and structurally change what we want to do. If we're looking for buy-in more, we want to like, I mean, we can hold, Joe, you've done the open forums, like, you know, whatever. And I don't think people are going to show up to it, but something like that where they can come in and kind of, you know, have their say on it.
Most of the time, in today's world, we'll probably do a Zoom.
We can do a Zoom one.
To get people there.
But I get what you're saying about the buy-in. And if it's more the buy-in, I'm okay with
just
that.
like I said, it's just like the goals. Like we have SMART goals on objective 2.2 of establish really specific, you know, SMART goals. But yet you go back to our goals and they're so vague in how from our side of things, when we have to do a superintendent review, when we have to look at Norton schools, how are we looking at this and saying, hey, we met our goals if we don't have any measurement tools to do it?
Well, so when I looked at this, the first thing I thought was, none of these are measurable, right? They're not really measurable. So they're not technically goals. I go back to, I think it's more of a structure, a framework that says, this is what we're looking to do. We're looking to, whatever, we're looking to educate a child. Okay, well, how do you know if you've educated the child? Well, he learned math. Well, but he didn't learn high math. Oh, but he learned English. He didn't learn French. You know, there's always another bar you can set, I guess. So yeah, I agree with you that these are not necessarily measurable and attainable, right? All goals should be those two things. And I'm not sure any of these goals are. However, I think with respect to it being a framework to approach how we want to do, you know, conduct our school business, I think they make some good sense. So.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't want to think we need to light the document on fire. I think we also just like, there's an aspect of it, there's like sitting here as a parent and a school committee member, graduating from Norton, going through every single one of these schools. I don't feel comfortable as a school committee member looking at this and being able to tell another parent, this is how we're going to do it. This is what we're doing. This is what this means. And not that that's quote unquote my job, because I would probably refer to people who know what the hell they're talking about. But it's just, there's something in it that just like, I don't know. I don't know exactly what and how to stick my finger on it. It's just, to me, it's very vague. I don't know. It's just, something just doesn't sit right.
So it is our job to not pass something we're not comfortable with. You know, that's 100% our job. So is it that you're looking for more voices to be heard? Is that kind of where?
I would love. Yeah, I mean, I think doing some type of a public, maybe no one shows up, which then, hey, you know what, your silence is a
right, then the question is answered, right?
But like, I feel like maybe it is something that we look at to do an open public forum for. hear it out, listen, see if there's anything on there. I would also love, whether we have teacher representation in here as well, you know, and I would love to have a little bit of both sides if possible, to be like, hey, I really like this, hey, I don't, you know, and have, and honestly, I would even want the students' opinions on it, you know? These kids, those are the ones who are gonna be affected by it, you know? So what are they looking like in terms of a high school kid? You know, we have brilliant minds who, we've all said are a lot smarter than we are, who, you know, what is their buy-in? What do they think about the vision and the direction of this town and what we do moving forward, you know, within public schools?
Well, here's where I sit on this. I mean, I'm ready to entertain a motion to vote on this as is. My hesitation is this has been out for a while. We had 4 responses. I've had a couple of calls on it, mostly from parents saying lofty goals. And to Dinesh's point, this is a living document. Dr. Baetta's point, this could all change with funding. My hesitation is this: if we delay this, how does it change it?
It goes to become Vision 2027.
But if we delay it to next
I mean,
meeting,
I'm not trying to
January's
be smart,
meeting,
but like-
or February's meeting, to implement this, how does it change this document?
Right, what's gonna
Just-
change it? Somebody
does
getting up
public-
and saying, well, I want this, what changes it? Right?
I don't know.
You're,
but
yeah,
it
you're looking
depends.
for public input, public, whether it be, you know, students, family, all of us have.
Well, correct, and like,
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
And I don't mean that
no,
disrespectfully.
no, and I
Yeah.
think the same thing, and one of my things that I said is I'm going to challenge the status quo. So I think that's where I'm coming from, and like, yes, you guys having the experience and you sitting on one of these strategic planning things before
Yeah.
is definitely helpful. But yeah, I mean, that's, like I said, I don't know.
Yeah,
That's-
we've seen a
that's it.
little bit more background into
sure.
these things.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, think of it this way, Nick, and this isn't a negative comment. When we, in your opinion, were doing bad things, you stood up. You challenged us. You didn't agree with us.
I didn't think you were doing bad things.
No, I'm just figuratively.
Correct.
But to Sherry's point, she made this, to Dr. But no parents have really disagreed with this vision. You can disagree with it as a parent and school committee member. I respect that. That's democracy. As a parent, I enjoy this, and it's a vision. It's things, you know, I'm proud to have my last 2 children, my 2 remaining children in this district because, and Carolyn made a great point, the creativity we saw in our classroom a couple weeks ago was tremendous. We had 5 distinct creative projects because our teachers enhanced the creativity of our children. And a lot of what's in here is getting our teachers, you know, the tools they need to teach every child, not just, you know, Johnny has this issue, so he needs special help. You know, and I think this is one of the better vision plans we've seen, and I respect where you're coming from, that you're challenging the status quo. But we do that as a district. We challenge the status quo by doing things like this. This you won't see in too many districts. This is something unique to us because we don't stand back. We, as Norton Public Schools, like to be leaders. We like to challenge, you know, what these other towns are doing. You know, very much so. I talk highly of the schools all the time. I have, you know, 2 friends that are school committee members. They don't do this stuff. They're very much, yep, I'll vote on this. You know, Desi says this. I love Desi. I think as a district, as I mentioned, we challenge the status quo as a district because we do things like this. And, you know, that's where my piece is.
I don't think you're going to get a ton of disagreement on the document from the public. I don't find it to be a disagreeable document, quite frankly. It's not, it's you know, it's deliciously vague enough that it's hard to be like, yeah, I don't agree with that, I'm against that. And I think that's probably the idea of a vision plan, right? Like, quite frankly, there's a lot of stuff in here that you know, Vinny and Darcy could have just said, hey, this is how we operate without declaring it a vision per se. So, you know, I almost hate to say this, but the fact that we're saying it's a this our 2026 vision is not super relevant, quite honestly. Like, it's more a declaration of, okay, here's what we think is going to be best practice going forward, and we believe that this is the best practice for the next 4 years. You know, so I mean, I don't know. I think it's a good vision plan. I voted for it. At the same time, it's a ton of information. I'm fine having the conversation continue, not indefinitely. I think we need to put a drop dead date on it, and sometime in the fairly near future. And if we want to do a Zoom to get the buy-in so Nick feels better about it, I'm fine with that as well. But I can go either way on this variance. I don't think it's an issue to say we're going to hold a Zoom next week, and if nobody's there or
Right. So we're going to work the premise of the philosophy that if 17 people show up and they don't like SEL,
No.
SEL is gone.
The answer is no.
But that's what's going to happen.
Well, no, but it's not.
I'm going to go
It's
on
not,
record.
Joe.
I'm
It's not.
going on record with the committee.
No,
I'm going on
it's-
record with the committee.
It's not.
I'm
Because-
going on record with the committee.
And you can, and I'm going to tell you why you're wrong. Because you said 17 people show up and say, I don't like SEL, and so SEL is gone. 17 people may show up and say, I don't like SEL, and that's good, and it's their right and their opinion. SEL is not gone. That's not going to, I don't think we're going to fundamentally change this document, because again, I don't think there's a ton that's disagreeable in the document. If someone comes in and says, hey, I want something added, because this is how I personally feel, and yada, 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 that's not Norton's vision. That's that person's vision.
Yeah, but wouldn't you,
We're not-
but Dinesh, wouldn't you rather have it be Norton's vision than, no offense, our administration's vision?
Well, if you're looking to
I know
make
that's
it-
tough, that's hard to listen to and hear, but isn't that?
No, it's easy to listen to, but if you're looking to have it be the vision of all 18,000 people, it won't be a 2-hour presentation, it'll be a 200-year presentation, because every single person has a personal agenda and an access.
And that's where we find that common ground and common thing of, we need our administrators, because we need our administrators in order to have a committee moving forward and to know the insides of what's going on in our schools. That's where our administration comes in.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is, it can't be an open document.
It's not going to be all or
It's not
all or
Wikipedia,
nothing.
where anybody who wants to come in changes it, says, okay, I'm gonna put this in because I think that should be in. It has to have some structure, and the structure has to be about how are we gonna educate and move our children forward in the schools? And the administration and the teachers are the best people to determine that. And I understand that there are multiple
Well, I think we
opinions.
just have very fundamental differences on that, but that's fine.
Well, if you think that the best deciders of how to educate our children are not our teachers, then yes, we do have a fundamental disagreement. And I'm not sure how to respond to that, quite honestly, because if that's what you're saying basically people should homeschool. I don't understand that at all.
No, that's not what it is. No, I'm saying the people who know what's best for their children are the parents. The best people to educate our children are the teachers. However, that collaboration has to be, and like Joe pointed out, that is one of a strong piece that we need to do better as a committee and as administrators, is to tie that in.
We're not excluding the parents. I'm
Yeah,
not gonna
but
find it quickly,
but to me,
somewhere here, there is a we are gonna have a formal assessment that includes the parents.
But what I'm saying is, to me, we never included the parents in from the start.
So this circles back to, it's more the, make sure their voice is heard. That's
Bingo.
what it is.
Bingo.
Then let's
This
just-
goal is for education, and you just said our educators are the ones that are doing the education.
No, not social emotional learning has a lot to do with what's happening at home. Well,
But our educators needs to be the ones that are identifying.
Absolutely, but our parents are going to be our key people on what's happening at home in terms of behavior-wise, in order to pass that information off to our teachers and our admin. And then, quite frankly, the admin's going to reach back out to the parents and saying, hey, this is what we're doing in school. It has to be a collaboration. If we lose parents and only go administrators, or vice versa, it's never going to work.
But you don't think that's happening now? You don't think Vinnie's department, they're not reaching out to parents if there's an issue with a child and figuring out what's going on at home?
No, I never said that. I'm saying that's what I'm saying though, is we don't have parent buy-in to this, that we know. Again, I'm making a very generous statement, because maybe we do, but we just don't know.
Right.
We don't know if we have full buy-in, we don't know if we have no idea. Is it a 50-50 split? Is it 80-30? I mean, 80-20? Is it?
Well, I think we do know, because if it was,
the
you know,
silence speaks volumes.
yeah. People would
Fair.
think you've been at meetings,
But
you've seen it
Nick
happen.
is not comfortable that we do, and that's a,
But hey,
It's a legitimate-
I get it. I get it. It is.
You guys know how I feel about meetings and the length of the go. It's seeming like we have a 4-to-1 vote. And if the committee is completely fine with putting it to vote, put it to vote. I'm not gonna, I think we beat the horse here. I mean, it is, it is what it is. And I'm completely fine that, I've been on the 4-1 vote before. It's not a big deal to me. I'm just saying, those are my concerns. And I don't want to make it sound like I'm attacking and the work of what's going on, because that's not the case. It's a simple of, I feel like from the start, we could have maybe done a better job, and we could have had our parents be a little bit more of a heavier voice in terms of, hey, what do we want to see? The Portrait of a Graduate sounds great. It hasn't changed since 2017. The world's changed since 2017, big time. Are those same things what our parents and community people want? Is that something we review? Is that something we look at as a school committee and say, hey, you know what? Because one of my things would be like, how about some resiliency, some grit, Do we factor those into a Portrait of a Graduate?
Okay. So I would entertain a motion to approve this vision as presented.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Right?
Aye.
4-0, sorry, 4-1, Nick?
Yes, I would oppose. Yep.
Okay. Motion passes. So, any other business, Dr. Bennett?
Yes, you have a potential joint meeting that you need on an appointment, so you need to continue to have those deliberations.
No.
13th,
It's not an appointment though, right? We haven't done any interviews.
Well, they're,
There's only
No,
one candidate.
it's supposed to
How
be,
come they're the only one, we haven't interviewed anybody yet?
right, your meeting's
One
supposed to be an
candidate
interview.
Is the interview, and appointment,
Okay.
potential appointment.
All right.
Will be.
So we'll have time to discuss it amongst ourselves afterwards. I mean,
I assume it would be in that open forum that we could,
but you guys know how
as we've done it in the past.
I'm uncomfortable going in, talking to somebody one time and then saying, yep, we're gonna appoint that guy on the spot.
and this has been like publicized that they were looking for somebody? This has been,
The town published on 11/22 a list of vacancies. A candidate reached out.
published it where?
Sun Chronicle, Town Hall, and was on social media as well by a couple of different people. As I understand it, there was a candidate for EDC
Yeah.
that
Jerry Steele.
was not handled properly, in my opinion.
Jerry Steele.
That didn't happen. This was this other person sent a letter of interest to the select board as is policy to be considered for appointment to PBC because of the resignation of Dinah.
So they posted it 2 days before Thanksgiving, and it's December 8th, and we're like, that's good enough, I guess.
They
That's
bring
what
it to
I-
us.
That's what
we're
I'm
just-
wondering.
Right, that's what I'm saying, like, this
So
is
if the
this is the
committee,
first
if the
time.
committee
we've-
wishes, the committee could send a letter to the chair of the select board, stating that the committee would, because of the timing, would want it to be opened, and then receive applicants, review those applicants, and then hold a joint meeting. That's typically.
I think that's the way to go. And
Yeah. I don't think we should be appointing anybody at our next meeting, if that's the case, because again, I think we need to be a little cognizant of the fact, like Dinesh just said, posted 2 days before Thanksgiving, got sent out by the town clerk. We have probably 15 open spots on committees town-wide right now. At least. I think we need to do a little bit better of a job.
And some of those are historically open. They never get
For
filled.
sure. And I think we just need to do a little bit better of a job. And again, we might only have one person, that's right, but.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll talk to the chair and.
After
My
this
2
3-hour
cents is-
meeting, I might throw my hat in the ring for PBC. Just FYI.
My 2 cents is this, and I'm gonna take a different perspective. This person took the time to show interest in this opening. It's someone, I don't have a problem with this person, he's been involved in the town for a long time. To me, I wouldn't wanna prevent somebody that has an interest in a committee that is struggling, we'll say. and maybe this person is a difference maker on their committee. I don't
So-
know, that's my perspective.
I don't have any problem with that person. In fact, I think that person is an excellent
I think
candidate.
he'd be very good
But
at that.
the point is that our job is, our job is to go through the process and find the absolute best candidate we can. And we don't know if there would potentially be other candidates because this has largely been done in the dark.
So maybe
That's my problem.
maybe we need to have a meeting to discuss the process with our colleagues.
I think you could probably do that, just chair to chair about the expectations of the process, and then establish that it needs to go out a little longer than just the timetable that was given. And again, I do not have a dog in this pony show, if you are in this.
Dog in the fight.
Yeah, exactly, dog in the fight.
You're mixing metaphors.
Mixing metaphors.
Remember, I'm Portuguese, I learned English. But my point is that you know, having a history with the person that's an applicant for the job, it's an outstanding candidate as far as I'm concerned to get a job done because he did it for a $34 million building in this town once before. But the fact is, your argument is process, and I think if that's your argument, then so be it. And make the phone call and say we want this out more time just for the sake of the process, and go from there.
Just transparency, you know, I guess.
Now, in the event, so I will do what the committee would like me to do, chair to chair. In the event there is no more applicants showing up on the 13th, do you guys have any problem moving forward with the process to appoint, interview, so on and so forth? Like,
I mean, I want to see somebody in the seats that we can get going with these new projects. I mean,
Well,
to think
that's-
that we
my
have
concern is
planned
their
the
projects
athletic
are up to
complex
spec.
and
Yeah,
but you still have
completed
quorum
it.
anyway, though.
Right.
Huh?
You still have quorum anyway.
It's not.
They just don't move along anything without that
Piece
person.
exists right now.
Right, it does exist, but their leader, the chair left. The chair stepped down.
They have a chair now.
So-
Slash
Have an
is the chair,
interim.
right?
So.
So
He's interim.
So for the sake of just informing the committee, if I may, I understand your questions about process, because this is one of the only committees that the school committee is involved in a joint meeting to appoint, right? It has to be, you know, it's 5-5 and until it's broken, right? Until somebody wavers but
So how would
the
that-
permanent building committee's job that's remaining is currently only 2 municipal projects. I would hate for the school committee in any way, shape, or form to be seen as blocking those projects, having a full committee with somebody who has experience.
So were those
Just-
projects on hold now because of?
They're not on hold, but the committee
Still
isn't
bidding
full,
process.
and the committee's in need of expertise and people that have done projects. That would only be my consideration of advice to the school committee. Just saying, I understand that process is important, especially Dinesh and Nick. I know the two of you are
But we've
hard
used
on
this
that.
process before,
but-
that's why
but-
I'm,
But I think that you just should be aware of that. And you also said there are committees that have been open for 15 years. And so if you have somebody who has experience, you get 2 major projects that are about to open bids.
they've actually gone on to
So,
best.
yeah, they've gone on.
Ask anybody who just made a huge mistake what happened, they'll say, I was in a rush.
Mr. Savas, as always, you're correct. I am just giving you a different flavor. I am just giving you a different flavor.
When Joe says as
based on-
always, you're correct, I don't disagree.
I'm just giving you a different flavor on what I would want to be seen
Yes,
coming the other way. That's all.
I understand the optics of it, but this is not about this isn't the optics of it.
It's, again, it's the full committees. I'm
I
just
mean,
giving
the
you.
wording
my
of
thoughts.
that thing is not just to appoint somebody, it is to conduct the interviews at a point. And we're supposed to do it together. And at this point, I don't think we've done none of it, right?
I think the process needs to be discussed. I think the communication and the process 100% needs to be discussed. I personally just don't want to see the momentum or, I mean, it's been tough. It's been tough for these guys. I would like to see these projects get started.
Yeah.
That
That's
particular
where I'm at.
person has experience
Right.
on working with
I know him well.
committees of different
I know him
personalities.
well, and I respect him, and I think he'd be an excellent candidate. It is not that I don't think he is a good candidate in any way, shape, or form.
We'll connect. I'll connect with each of you individually and we'll go over.
I have nothing else.
You know how I feel.
I have one more thing, I promise to be very quick. Do you think it's possible to?
No.
Good.
Time
up.
to possibly have these back on Zooms, with the one exception. We do not answer questions.
Yeah.
Why?
Violation of open meeting if you don't, and if you have it on Zoom, I don't believe.
Wait, are you talking about opened up to
Us?
Zoom?
This
Us
meeting,
here?
we have like.
Oh, have them be hybrid.
Correct.
So they're
Not
available.
us.
Not us, not us. Not, sorry.
So
Not
if the
us.
meeting is
Not us.
hybrid, you
Just
have to allow
people
for
can
the
join
public
us.
to
Yeah, we
join
still have to
and
allow.
speak to a question
I
on your
scratch
agenda.
my, thank you.
So in no world can we have it on Zoom and not include them in the meeting?
As part of the open meeting.
Okay,
Because that would be
okay.
an open meeting thing.
It's
I was just
like-
thinking, because I do know, there's like a lot of people who are like, oh, I'd love to go, and obviously, we say that, but to actually, just, I do, but I do think there's people, like, when I first started, we had people still on Zoom, and there was always like 18, 19 people on it.
Right.
Were they paying attention to the camera? I don't
Our
know.
own staff attends if it's Zoom
Yeah.
versus.
Yeah, and in fairness, when that happened, everybody was at home.
Yeah.
Everybody was stuck at home, so they're like, well, I
When we
might as well go on that
True,
meeting.
true.
No, but I did a Zoom meeting for the coffee hour, I had 13 participants, I did a live meeting at 3, so your point is well taken.
Correct, but I got it. I don't want to open it up.
But those are
to
different.
A hybrid, that's.
And you know, speaking historically, having when we were hybrid,
If it matters that
the
much.
acoustics,
Yeah.
as a committee member, you couldn't
Yeah, it's
hear
tough.
very well. If you're just listening, that's one thing.
Yeah, and it's okay for you to Zoom in if you're traveling or you're not here, as long as a majority of you 3 are physically here.
Does anyone know what the select board does? Because these still do virtual meetings now, right?
That is correct, they are hybrid.
They are hybrid.
Select board is hybrid, planning board is hybrid.
Finance committee's full Zoom.
Yeah, well, no, for sure. I was
No,
thinking if we could
we
just kind of
came back as
videotape
soon-
ourselves with no public input from the
No.
Zoom. Because I wanted it to be like, hey, if you need something to
Says
say.
the guy who wants the
come say
parents'
it.
input, Nick.
But I want them to come
mean,
here.
come
I want them to
on.
come here. I don't want them to do it virtually.
No, historically, I mean, we had more participants, or I shouldn't say that. Our attendance was higher on Zoom.
That was my point.
Right.
Yeah.
Interaction remained about the same, to be honest.
And attendance, I think, again, was the fact
Because
that
it could be sitting at
everyone was
home
sitting
on
at
your
home.
couch.
As for me, on some of those days, it's Zoom
Motion to
meetings
adjourn.
and now.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Have a good
Took 10 years.